Everyone has imagined at least once what it would be like to have another version of themselves doing everything in their place, working, studying, exercising, and even making money while they just relax. Sang-woon had thought about that many times too. In fact, he almost had that kind of life, and even though he still has not achieved exactly what he wanted, he has not given up on the idea. Instead, he started working harder than anyone else to achieve an extremely peaceful life in the future. It might sound ridiculous for someone to work so hard just to live quietly later, but deep down, everyone does that. For him, killing monsters is just part of the path, and he is not alone in this, because the ability he awakened is cloning. It all started when he was thinking about how he needed to work, study, eat, and deal with a bunch of things at the same time. In the end, he just wanted to play, travel, hang out with friends, and maybe even date. One day he truly wondered why people could only do one thing at a time. He always thought it would be amazing to have two bodies. While some people on the street were arguing about awakened abilities, Sang-woon, a high school student from Supernormal National University, just wanted to go home as soon as possible. He really wished he had two bodies, but at that moment he was only there to listen to the speech of the rank A hunter Park Won-tae, who introduced himself as the person in charge of the 10th National Awakened Program. This program existed because people exposed to mana eventually awakened sooner or later, so the government decided to force this process inside safe portals to prevent accidents. Won-tae explained that everyone hoped the awakening would happen safely, and announced the immediate start with Group 1. After waiting for quite a while, it was finally Sang-woon's turn. He was number 7 in Group 37. His identification was completed, so he handed over all electronic devices and entered the portal full of fear. Inside, he was officially identified as user Jong Sang-woon. With authentication and registration completed, after crossing the portal and feeling a slight headache, he appeared inside a bunker. He realized he was not the only one feeling unwell from the trip. Some people were nauseous, while others had already started awakening their abilities. A girl summoned a fire phoenix, and as soon as she used her power, several guild scouts appeared offering cards that caught Sang-woon's attention, and he thought joining a guild must be interesting. Soon after, a staff member approached him asking how he was doing and whether he had already confirmed his abilities. Sang-woon opened his status window, and the first thing he noticed was that his attributes were terrible. All of them were below 1, with broken numbers. However, he had a skill called cloning. He could summon an identical replica of himself, and the number of summons would increase as he leveled up. At the moment, he could only summon one clone for up to 1 hour, with a cooldown of 24 hours. He also had a permanent enhancement that increased the clone's mirroring rate, currently at 50%. He wondered if that was useful for anything beyond everyday tasks. The staff member commented that unless someone was already very talented, most people started with similar stats. There was no reason to be discouraged. When Sang-woon mentioned that his ability was cloning, the man showed surprise. He said he had heard of a phantom clone technique in the past, but it was useless because the ghosts could not interact with the physical plane. Sang-woon thought that in his case, the clone was not a ghost. The staff member said that in any case, it was better than awakening nothing, and that if he demonstrated the ability to guilds, he might receive some offers. Meanwhile, another awakened individual drew attention by manifesting stone armor, attracting even more scouts. That made Sang-woon feel a bit pressured. He preferred to leave and asked where the exit inspection was. He went through a screening capsule, where a doctor confirmed that he was indeed an awakened with a cloning technique, and that there was a 73% chance of him having one or more additional abilities in the future. The confirmation was completed, and he received an official awakened certificate, sent directly to his bracelet. Later on the bus ride home while analyzing the bracelet, Sang-woon commented to himself that everything had been faster than he expected. He still did not know how it would be to use the ability in practice. When he arrived home, he found his various online game accounts open, farming automatically. When he checked the main one, he saw that he had not obtained the item he wanted. He thought the game was becoming less popular, and that the market value was dropping. Maybe it would be better to look for another game, and create a new macro to make money. He needed to pay rent, school tuition, and other bills, and that was driving his mind crazy. He would probably have to start handing out resumes. Then suddenly, he remembered the cloning technique. He decided that at least once he would test the ability. Sang-woon focused, felt mana spreading through his body like smoke, and in front of him appeared an identical clone, completely naked. At that moment he confirmed that it was really a clone, and was so surprised that he asked if he could touch it. The clone answered yes, calling him master, which made everything even stranger. When he touched it, he realized it was not an illusion or a ghost. It was a real physical body. Without wasting time, he dressed the clone and began testing. He discovered that the clone could hear his thoughts and obey mental orders without him needing to say anything. He told the clone to do 1,000 squats. After a while, the clone became exhausted, and Sang-woon concluded that its stamina was the same as his, meaning that if someone completely sedentary, in the middle of the test, his phone rang and distracted him, making him forget that the clone was still exercising on its own. It was a friend asking what ability he had gotten. The friend said he had awakened 2 abilities, and asked if Sang-woon had ended up with a bad one. He replied that technically yes. The friend joked that he might have gotten a lazy ability, one that would let him lie down all day, and said he needed to be more active. Sang-woon just thought his friend was way too annoying. Suddenly a system window appeared, informing him that his stamina had increased by 0.001. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the jumper George Lucas, holder of the Flash ability, an S-class ranker from America, and leader of the Illuminati group, the first person to complete the Odin Tower dungeon, was in his main building worried about another matter. His secretary commented that, according to the latest data, for every 300 million people, about 80% were awakening. George asked how long it would take to reach 100%. She replied that, based on the current pace of the Awaken program, maybe 5 years. He reflected that 5 years was not that long. A few days later, Sangwon was running in the park. Some men who always passed by commented that the kid showed up every day running in a jacket, as if he wanted to die from the heat. When an elderly woman approached to offer water, he simply thanked her from a distance and kept running. At home, when he weighed himself, he saw he was at 78 kilos. He realized that even eating more than before, he had lost around 20 kilos just that month. He barely trained personally, but his body kept getting more defined every day. He also seemed taller. Messages of attribute increases kept appearing, showing gains in stamina, reflex, and agility. He concluded that it was really true that the ability someone received matched their personality. Over time, he organized what he had learned about the clones. First, the clone's pain and exhaustion did not affect him directly. Second, if the clone exceeded its limit and got damaged, it would simply disappear. Third, whenever the original body changed, the clone immediately copied the new appearance. Fourth, he could give mental orders even from far away. And fifth, a clone could not use cloning. If it could, it would be possible to create infinite clones, which was clearly impossible. Curious, Sangwon searched the Awakened wiki about stats. He discovered that level 1 was the maximum limit of a non-awakened person. There were normal and special stats, but most people only had part of the normal ones. Regeneration, resistance, vitality, and mentality were examples of special stats, and almost no one knew how to unlock them. Normally, with basic training, it was very hard to increase even 0.001 per day, but he could, because the clone trained without rest and always pushed the body to the limit. That was why his attributes were rising so fast. If he trained together with the clone, he could reach dozens of points over time. Excited, he saw a gym flyer and looked at his computer screen, deciding that he would be the head and the clones would be his limbs. However, when he checked the bills he had to pay, he realized he had nothing left. He was spending too much on food. He needed to get a part-time job. He started searching online for something simple to apply for. At first, he would have to do it personally, because the clone could not perform complex tasks that he himself had never done before. That was when he found a job opening at the Wukong Logistics Center for sorting and unloading packages. The shift was from 7 at night to 4 in the morning, from Monday to Saturday. He thought it was perfect. He called immediately, said he saw the ad on the website, and that he could start right away. The person on the other end of the line asked if he could start that very same day. Sangwon replied yes, that he was available. They told him to show up at the logistics center at 6:30 in the evening. After hanging up, he wondered if the place was that desperate for workers. Later, he went to the logistics center accompanied by the clone, which was somewhat disguised. He thought about saying they were twin brothers, but figured it might cause problems. He gave some mental instructions to the clone, and noticed that the building was much bigger than he had imagined. A man showed up asking if he was Sangwon and what he was doing there. He asked if the man was Mr. Deokchil. They confirmed each other's identities, and Sangwon explained that he had come with a friend to work. Deokchil commented that he almost did not recognize him because he had lost a lot of weight. Then he pointed toward the office, so they could stop there first. Sangwon thanked him, but he was visibly nervous. When Deokchil left, he mentally asked the clone if everything was okay. The clone replied that it was Meish. He took a deep breath and thought that now he was an awakened, so he needed to act with more confidence. He planned to finish the shift quickly and go back home to eat some instant noodles. But reality turned out very different. A few hours later, he was completely exhausted. He had been arrogant to underestimate the job. The packages seemed endless. Meanwhile, the other workers carried on as if it were nothing unusual. Sangwon even wondered if those guys had some kind of special ability, but he realized they did not. It was just habit and endurance built over time. Deokchil himself worked calmly. Meanwhile, Sangwon's clone was doing better than everyone else. He started to think that maybe he did not even need to be there, since the clone could handle everything on its own. During the break, he was completely worn out. Deokchil approached and said he needed to drink something, also offering him some food. Sangwon thanked him. Deokchil handed a can to the clone and asked his name. The clone gave a fake name. Then Deokchil commented that it seemed like Sangwon was a university student, and that it must be his first time doing heavy labor like that. He confirmed that it was indeed very tiring. Deokchil said that even so, the two of them had courage, because most beginners quit quickly. Sangwon thought that if it were not for his nearly empty bank account, he would have run away too. The conversation continued, and Deokchil asked which university he attended. Sangwon replied that he studied at Gongbuk, and that it was nothing special. Deokchil said he did not need to be modest, because he would be happy if his own daughter could get into a university like that. Sangwon commented that he was not such a good student, and that he got in through some special admissions. Deokchil then asked if he would be interested in another part-time job. Instead of wearing himself out there, he could tutor his daughter. Sangwon was surprised. Him, a tutor. But when he remembered remembered the bills and his negative balance, he started to seriously consider it. He asked if he would have to teach all subjects. Deokchil admitted, a bit embarrassed, that his daughter was not very good at studying. The payment would be 50,000 per session, 2 hours, once a week. Sang-woon quickly calculated and realized that for the time invested, it was a good deal. He accepted. Deokchil said he would talk to his daughter after the shift and send a message with the details. Alone, Sang-woon hoped it would work out. Soon after, he received another system notification informing him that his stamina and physical resistance had increased because of the heavy work. He had gotten a job, actually 2, and was still improving his stats. When he went to grab the food he had received, he realized that the clone had already eaten everything. The clone had simply stuffed everything into its mouth and swallowed it in one go. Sang-woon was outraged when he realized there was nothing left for him. The next morning, he was completely wrecked. He decided that from then on, he would use the clone to take over part-time jobs whenever possible. Clone number 1 kept training and working hard, but he ordered it to return home. He thought about making it disappear to summon it again, but the clothes would be left on the floor, so he decided to wait. He ate first, and shortly after, the clone returned. Sang-woon ordered it to take a shower and change clothes. With the clone already cleaned up, he decided to test something else. He took a needle and pricked the clone's finger. A drop of blood came out, but the clone did not react. Sang-woon asked if it hurt and apologized mentally. He was doing that because he wanted to find out if he could unlock the regeneration stat. The path to unlocking the regeneration stat was still uncertain. One of the theories said that a person needed to injure their own body, let the wound heal naturally without any external help, and repeat the process countless times until the attribute awakened. Sang-woon thought that maybe he would start to see some sign if he did that for a month, but it was frightening to cause a serious injury on purpose. So for now, he decided to stick with small pricks on the clone's finger. After that, he gave new mental orders. The clone should eat instant noodles whenever it felt hungry, train a lot, and when it went to work, take his phone to answer any calls. Later, Sang-woon was on his way to the gym when he ran into an acquaintance, Yahello. His friend was shocked by how much weight he had lost. Sang-woon replied that he had been training over the past few days. Yahello said he needed to start working out too, and asked if all of that was already muscle. He wanted to know the name of the gym. Sang-woon mentioned one called Steel Body. Yahello said he had heard of it, that the facilities were nice, and decided to go with him. When they arrived, the receptionist was having lunch and apologized for the delay. He introduced the Steel Body gym and explained that they had a promotion of 3 months for 160,000. Sang-woon thought it was reasonable and asked if he could get guidance on proper form with the machines. The trainer said it was not difficult and started helping him. Since it was his first time, he had some difficulty, but nothing unusual. The trainer commented that he had good posture on the incline bench press. What really caught everyone's attention was Gyeongdo, who started lifting heavy weights while shouting like a wild boar. He let the plates slam and was completely pumped up. The trainer said it looked like he had been training for a long time. Gyeongdo replied that it was his first time. The trainer then asked if his strength had increased after awakening and what his strength stat was. He answered that it was around 2.1. The trainer praised him, saying it was excellent and that his vitality must also be high. Sang-woon concluded that his friend had awakened a significant strength attribute. If someone with a 2.1 stat was already like that, he did not even want to imagine the level of elite hunters. There was a reason everyone only talked about hunters. In the middle of the workout, Sang-woon received a call from Deokchil, asking if he was doing well. The topic was the tutoring for his wife and daughter. Deokchil asked if he had time at that moment to stop by their place. Sang-woon replied, yes sir, he could go later to the apartment. Meanwhile, he noticed that Gyeongdo had not signed up. His friend said it was better not to train there to avoid causing envy. Sang-woon mentally thought that was a lie, and that he just did not want to train in a place without women. Either way, he thought it was better like that, because he would not have acquaintances at the gym, and could send the clone to train in his place. As he approached Deokchil's apartment, he heard an argument from inside. The daughter was complaining that her father had decided everything on his own, and that the tutor was already on the way. Deokchil replied that he needed to go to work, and that if she did not like it, she could say it in person. The moment the door opened, the girl came face to face with Sang-woon. She was completely confused. Right after that, Deokchil apologized for almost bumping into him, and his wife appeared asking if he was really Sang-woon, because he had lost so much weight that she almost did not recognize him. He replied that he had been training a lot, and asked if that was Miss Haeon. She immediately blushed. Sang-woon introduced himself formally, and said he would be her tutor starting that day. He mentioned that he had heard she wanted to get into the same university as him. The parents watched their daughter's reaction. Haeon seemed embarrassed, probably because he had heard the argument. Sang-woon asked what year she was in, and requested to see her grades. When he reviewed the report, he realized it was not as bad as he had imagined, but she was always right on the edge of failing. She became even more embarrassed while her parents watched. At that moment, Deokchil quietly grabbed his jacket and said he needed to go to work, thanking him before leaving. His wife called him a traitor for leaving her alone in that situation. Noticing that Haeon was discouraged, Sang-woon said it was okay. He himself had not been an exemplary student and still managed to get into university. He said that if she did her best, everything would work out. They decided to start classes from that day on, twice a week. After the first session, Sang-woon thought there was still a long way to go. She had clear difficulties, but she also seemed genuinely interested in improving. That was what mattered in the end. When Sang-woon got home, he was alone, because clone number 1 had gone to work the night shift. For now, he had given the clone a phone to answer calls, trials, but he started thinking that if in the future he had several active clones, giving a device to each one would be complicated and expensive. Later, he logged into Hunter Web to search for abilities similar to his and try to better understand how he could evolve. He found a highly recommended article for summoning users. It talked about familiar abilities and the sharing of senses with pets or summoned creatures. According to the text, the senses could be completely shared between the user and the creature, including vision. It was considered extremely useful for sending a summon alone and gaining experience without needing to move. The problem was the price. The familiar ability cost 100 million. Right below it, there was a telepathic ability scroll that allowed the user to send thoughts directly to a specific person within range. The price was even more absurd. 400 million. Sang-woon stared at those numbers and thought that if he had that kind of money, he would buy a house instead of an ability. It would take forever to gather that amount. He concluded that high-level hunters must really make a lot of money. His balance barely reached 33,000. Discouraged, he simply threw himself onto the bed. He started to wonder if he should try to become a real hunter. He saw several news stories about millionaire hunters buying houses and luxury cars. His ability was too good to be limited to manual labor at a logistics center. He decided that he needed to at least try. He put on his jacket and chose to give the hunter life a chance. At that moment, he received a system notification informing him that the vitality attribute had been unlocked. While heading to the association, he recalled the online classes he had watched about the history of the world. In the year 2000, portals began appearing simultaneously across the planet, releasing monsters. The event became known as the Great Disaster, and more than half of the world population died. It seemed like humanity would be wiped out. However, at the same time, superhumans with special abilities began to appear. With these awakened individuals on the front lines, humanity managed to resist and win the initial war. Now, in 2023, the people who hunted the remaining monsters were called hunters. He was watching a basic video lesson on how to become a hunter while walking. If he passed the exam, he would receive a nationally recognized license, allowing him to kill monsters legally. He took off his earphones when he arrived at the Hunter Association. He felt that after unlocking vitality, his body seemed lighter and more resilient. When he entered, he was impressed. There were melee weapon shops, firearm shops, equipment, and people everywhere. It looked like a gigantic mall focused entirely on hunters. An attendant announced that the test taking place on basement level 1 would end in 20 minutes. Sang-woon felt his nerves rising, but still headed there. When he entered the room, he saw a large group of people gathered, some staring at the door and others laughing quietly. The atmosphere was intimidating. Shortly after, the exam inspector introduced himself as Han Myung-won, a C-class hunter responsible for the licensing test. He explained that the exam would be divided into 3 parts: a written test, a practical test, and an aptitude test. Anyone caught cheating would be immediately disqualified and would not be allowed to retake the exam that year. In addition, the association never forgot cheaters. The atmosphere became heavy instantly. Even Sang-woon felt the pressure increase. Manhwa then announced that the test would begin right away. Later, Kang Junmo from the JM agency was genuinely worried about the situation of his agency and the results that kept getting worse. As he walked toward the location of the rookie test, he thought that money simply was not coming in, but expenses kept appearing from all sides. He muttered to himself that it was almost time for the test to end, and tried to cheer himself up with the possibility of recruiting someone promising. When the test finally ended, Sang-woon received an F-class approval. He wondered what that actually meant, because everyone said it was easy, and in his mind it felt something like getting a driver's license. The questions on the written test were simple. It was enough to memorize some basic information. They gave some time to practice the shooting test, and the target was very close, so there was not much difficulty. As for the aptitude test, it felt more like a morality test than anything else. During the evaluation, Myung-won asked if he had ever thought about shooting a person. Sang-woon replied that of course not, and right after that the evaluator ended the conversation and called the next candidate. That made him think that the job of a hunter, in the end, was about risking one's own life and using weapons, almost as if the government wanted them to do exactly that. Even so, he decided not to think too much about it. When he left the building, several agents were outside handing out business cards to those who had just passed. By coincidence, he ended up picking the card from JM Agency. The man who approached introduced himself as Kang Junmo and explained that whenever he needed to buy any items or look for a monster to hunt, he could contact him. Sang-woon thanked him, and at that moment realized that his cloning skill had reached level 2. Excited about it, he ran off, leaving Junmo behind and saying he would get in touch another time. Junmo just asked him not to forget. Back home, Sang-woon thought that cloning was, without a doubt, the best possible ability. He summoned his second clone and commented that he was eager to put it to work. Then he looked again at the JM agency card and kept the information. Meanwhile, Junsmo had already handed out most of his cards and could only hope that someone would actually call. He remembered the official Haesong Guild building and a recent conversation about item prices. One of the members had said that it was enough to set the price according to the official list. Junmo questioned whether troll blood was really being sold for 2.4 million, because in his mind it should be worth at least 5 million. The other man asked how long he had been part of Haesong and commented that he needed to be more perceptive. He said that following rules was important, but business required results, and that he needed to stop acting only like a servant of justice. Junmo thought that if he had known it would be this difficult, he would have kept quiet, until he finally received a call. It was Sang-woon, setting up a meeting. Later at a cafe, Junmo sat sat down and apologized for being late, but the other replied that he had also just arrived. They ordered something to drink, and the agent asked if he would like to go to a safe hunting location, suitable even for a beginner. He also wanted to know what his ability was exactly. Sang-woon replied that it was cloning. Junmo remembered that he had heard about it before, and associated it with something like creating illusions. He thought that a beginner without strong physical ability might not be very useful. While he was thinking about it, Sang-woon drank an entire hot coffee in one go, as if it were nothing. The agent then handed over the contract for him to read, and began explaining the options. The first recommended location was the slime hunting ground. They were not aggressive or very dangerous creatures, but when they died they released a poisonous gas, so it was mandatory to wear masks and protective suits, which were not very practical to put on. Sang-woon replied that this would not be a problem. The second location was the horned rabbit area. It was possible to hunt there for a long time, but since they were difficult to catch, it was not possible to get many at once. Even so, there was a safety barrier, and it was considered one of the safest places for beginners. There were also even lower class monsters, such as giant rats, but those two were the only locations Jumo could truly guarantee as safe. Sang-woon said he found it interesting, and also liked the sale rate offered in the contract. He stated that he wanted to continue with the agreement. Junmu, a little confused, asked if he meant that he liked both locations, and explained that he would need to choose only one. Sang-woon replied that he did not need to choose. At that moment, the hand of one of his clones appeared, and stamped the contract, making it clear that when he said he liked both places, it meant he would hunt in both at the same time. Seeing that, Junmu immediately remembered the hunter with a cloning ability he had interviewed in the past. When that hunter showed that he really knew how to use the ability, he created several clones at once. All of them drew their swords and advanced toward the main body, but nothing happened. The hunter himself explained that those were only illusions. They could even touch things, but they did not deal real damage. Even so, it was a perfect ability to attract the attention of monsters and serve as a distraction. Junmo said that he had already seen enough at that time. In the present, Junmo remembered that cloning ability as something purely illusory, but now the situation was different. He stared at the clone that had checked the contract, and even drunk coffee. That did not look like a simple illusion. He began to wonder what exactly was happening, and even questioned whether they were twins. Sang-woon replied that it was reasonable to think that, but explained that the man sitting there was in fact his clone. He said that people might confuse his ability with someone else's, but that clone was real, made of flesh and blood. There was even another one, who at that moment was at the gym. Surprised, Junmo asked if they could build muscle. Sang-woon confirmed that they could, and explained that if the clone became stronger, he would also become stronger. The agent was impressed, and realized that this was not a common ability for a simple F-rank hunter. There was great potential there. Returning to the topic of hunting grounds, Sang-woon asked if there would be any problem if the same person entered different places at the same time. Junmo explained that it could be complicated because of the entry records, but said he could talk to the association to adjust that. However, it would be necessary to scan the identification bracelet and perform a demonstration of the ability for verification. Sang-woon agreed, only mentioning that he would not be able to use the ability until the following night. Junmo then suggested that they meet at the Hunter Center 2 days later. When he was about to talk about the contract, Sang-woon reminded him that he had already stamped it. The two stood up, shook hands, and officially confirmed their cooperation. 2 days later, at the Hunter Association, Junmo arrived early and commented that he had also come quickly because of their case, since he did not want to make them wait. They went straight to the reception, where an attendant asked if he was requesting dual access to the hunting ground. Sang-woon explained that yes, his ability was cloning, but that he only had one identification bracelet. The attendant replied that he understood and mentioned that he was the first, since Jumper, to request that kind of permission. That Jumper was known for teleporting from portal to portal, something completely out of the ordinary. Sang-woon realized that this kind of request was indeed very unusual. After some time, the permission request was already in progress. He would need to go through the civil service office, the equipment room, and then process the documents to carry out the authorization test in the ability demonstration room. He thought it was too much paperwork. Junmo said he would take care of the documents for him, and asked him to go straight to the demonstration room while he handled the rest. When it was time to demonstrate the ability, when Sang-woon summoned his clone, it appeared completely naked. Both he and the doctor who was evaluating him felt embarrassed by the situation. Later in the equipment room, the engineer prepared a second identification bracelet and informed them that the request had been completed. Now the clones could enter the hunting grounds by scanning their own fingerprints. Considering the characteristics of the cloning ability, simultaneous entries and exits would be possible, and wherever the original entered, the clones could also enter. The engineer commented that as far as he knew, it was something unprecedented and extremely interesting. Sang-woon noticed that the engineer was acting a bit too strangely around the clone, so he decided to leave. He went to Jinmo to inform him that the authorization was complete and that all preparations were ready. Jinmo confirmed and asked if he was already heading to the hunting ground. Sang-woon replied that he was, since his schedule was free that day. The agent then asked why he was hiding the clone with a mask. He explained that many people were interested in him, and that was true. One of the people watching him was the master of the Hisung Guild, Shin Hisung, who noticed that it had been Jinmo who brought the boy. He came down from where he was and called out to the agent, commenting that it had been a while since they had met in a place like that, and saying he did not know he was still working as a hunter agent. Sang-woon immediately recognized who he was, since Shin Hisung was extremely famous. Jinmo, visibly nervous, boss, gave a respectful greeting to the guildmaster. Shin Haesung commented that he and Jinmo were old friends, and asked who the young man beside him was. Jinmo replied that he was a hunter associated with his company. Haesung repeated the word hunter with a certain disdain, and asked if he was perhaps F rank, saying that it must be difficult for someone like Jinmo, who had once supervised C and D rank hunters, to now be taking care of a simple F rank. He said he could not believe he had fallen that far. Jinmo was clearly irritated, but Sang-woon placed a hand on his shoulder to calm him down. Haesung then asked if that 4-rank hunter had anything to say. Sang-woon replied calmly that it was nothing special, he simply felt honored to meet the #1 guildmaster in the country. Haesung commented that at least he seemed to have some sense. Without stopping, Sang-woon continued, saying that it was not just that the guild also ranked first in dungeon monopoly, in restricting hunting grounds, and in payment rates. Haesung was surprised by the praise, and said that the boy had courage. Suddenly, he appeared behind Sang-woon, and asked if his ability was as good as his courage. Before the situation could get worse, an employee approached, informing him that he was being called. Haesung said that he was lucky, and asked what his name was. Sang-woon replied that he could find out on his own. Haesung found it amusing, called him interesting, and said goodbye, mentioning Junmo before leaving. Later, inside the car, Junmo thanked Sang-woon for what he had done. Sang-woon said he could not just stand by and watch that happen. Junmo asked if he knew about his relationship with the Haesung Guild. Sang-woon replied that he was not stupid, and that he had researched the agency. During his research, he found rumors about Kang Junmo saying that he had been dismissed from the Haesung Guild. Junmo was surprised to learn that this was on the internet, and understood why his agency had been avoided. Sang-woon commented that there were people saying to never join the agency because they could become a target of the Haesung Guild. When Junmo asked why, even so, he had chosen JM Agency, Sang-woon replied that it was because of the payment rate, and because he believed he could trust him if something too difficult came up in that industry. Junmo thanked him for his trust. Meanwhile, Clone 02 was at the gym training until he bled, doing squats until he was close to passing out. A woman asked the instructor why he did not warn him that it was dangerous. The instructor said he had already tried, but the young man would not listen. Suddenly, the clone received a message from the original, drank a large glass of water and left immediately. The woman commented that he had stopped for now, and the instructor sighed in relief. Later at the slime field, Sang-woon smashed the monsters with a hammer, and used a vacuum device to suck up the remains, placing everything into a barrel of slime liquid. When he exited the portal, Junmo was waiting for him. Sang-woon complained that the gas mask was irritating, as if he were breathing through several layers on his face. Junmo explained that even though it was a safe field, few hunters went there because of that discomfort. Sang-woon said he would not do that for long. Junmo commented that he could hunt until the container filled up and then replace it with another, but admitted that enduring 6 hours there was difficult for anyone. With better equipment, it might be easier. Sang-woon said he would not stay there even 2 hours, but suggested that #2 could handle it. He tossed the mask to the clone, and wished him good luck, saying that he would go to the horned rabbit field. With #1 it would be easy. Only then did he realize that he had not yet picked up #1 from the gym. He went back with Junmo's car to get him. On the way, Junmo asked if he really called the clones by numbers. Sang-woon replied that since they were all identical, giving them creative names would only cause confusion. He mentioned that he had heard that weapons were usually used to hunt horned rabbits, and asked if he would not need equipment. Junmo explained that the agency had its own equipment, and that it was also possible to rent on site, but recommended that in the future he should have his own set. Since rented equipment could only be used in that specific field, it was easier to control. After some time traveling, they arrived at Jayanshan Field. It was a huge place, much more developed than the slime field. Jayanshan explained that it was the famous location where an invasion had once occurred. He said that portals were disconnected from the outside world, and that normally hunts took place after hunters entered them. However, in some cases monsters managed to cross the portal, destroy the surroundings, and turn the place into a true battlefield. That was called a monster invasion. Junmo explained that 5 years earlier, when the monster invasion happened there, most of the high-class creatures had been defeated. What remained were mostly F-class and E-class monsters, which ended up turning the place into a highly praised hunting ground among beginner hunters. They entered that enormous complex, which seemed to have multiple different hunting fields, full of players moving around, equipment rental shops, and organized areas for each type of activity. Sang-woon rented a rifle, night vision goggles, a shooting range slot, earplugs, and ammunition. The armorer did the calculations and said the total came to 700,000. He swiped the card, complaining that it was too much money. Junmo explained that most of the cost came from the ammunition, but that everything could be worth it if he managed to hunt the rabbit successfully, since the value of one rabbit was equivalent to a bucket of slime. Their designated location was Building F, 3rd floor. When they arrived, the environment was noisy, with several people shooting at rabbits as if it were a duck hunt. Junmo pointed to seat #4, and said that was his spot, asking if he was confident in his aim. Sang-woon replied confidently, saying he had only missed 3 shots during the hunter test. Junmo questioned whether he had really missed that many with the target so close. He then apologized mentally to the rabbits and promised they would not escape his aim. He carefully took aim, found a target, and began the hunt. 3 hours later, already late at night, he had not managed to catch a single one. He could not understand what was happening, because his aim was good, but the rabbits simply ran away at the exact moment he pulled the trigger. Even the agent nearby had already left. In the end, he did not even recover the money he had spent on bullets. Faced with failure, he told #1 1 to stay there, continue hunting the horned rabbits with the rifle, and also use the harpoon. Whenever he succeeded, he should send a message. If the ammunition ran out, he should also report it. He decided to return home. Later, lying in bed, he noticed that his mana was increasing. Number 2 was doing well in the slime field, and his attributes were steadily growing, although nothing impressive. Remembering the leader of the High Sung Guild, he realized he still had a long way to go before becoming truly strong. The attempt with the rabbits had been a complete disaster. He only hoped that number 1 would achieve at least some results. While he slept, number 1 sent several messages. The next day, Jinmo received a call from the manager of the slime hunting field, asking him to come immediately. They said that Song-woon had been hunting for more than 24 hours straight, and that it was madness. Jinmo replied that he was on his way. When the original Sang-woon woke up, he saw that number 1 was out of ammunition, and was surprised by the number of messages sent. When Jinmo arrived at the slime field, he found barrel after barrel filled with slime liquid. Sang-woon had hunted all of that in just one day. The clone's body was already collapsing, coughing up blood, but even so it continued working, leaving the staff worried. Jinmo thought there was no time to question it. After all, it was just a clone. He called Sang-woon and gave him the news that all storage containers had been filled in a single day. He said he was about to call the supervisor and asked number 2 to stop hunting. Sang-woon was satisfied and asked if they could also send cleaners to Jianshan because the monster carcasses were blocking the passage. Meanwhile, in the Jianshan complex, there was a huge pile of dead horned rabbits. People commented that it was insane, that they could not even count how many there were. Some recorded videos, took photos, and the topic was already starting to go viral. Many wondered if that hunter had done everything alone. Number 1 remained silent, covered in blood. A guild agent approached and offered a business card, but was completely ignored, which made him irritated. Other agents appeared saying it was useless to try, because he did not respond to anyone. Without anyone noticing, the original Sang-woon appeared, placed more ammunition in the clone's hands, and told him to keep hunting. He told him to hold on, because Jinmo would arrive soon to deal with the carcasses. He praised number 1's work, saying he had done an excellent job. The clone became shy from the praise, reloaded the weapon, and went back to hunting, while the crowd watched as if it were a spectacle, many already recording every movement. Later, during his work as a tutor, Sang-woon reflected that he had greatly underestimated his own clones. At the moment, they were receiving 50% of his attributes. Thinking in simple terms, that meant each one could do half of what he was capable of. But in practice, their ability to act like machines focused solely on completing the mission was completely different from what he could do alone. While he was lost in these thoughts, Haeyeon caught his attention and asked what he was thinking about so much. He replied that he had just realized that she had done much better than last time. Haeyeon said she had always believed she could do more if she truly tried, but asked again what he had been thinking about. He commented that he had gone to a hunting field and that the result had been better than he expected. She was surprised and asked if he was a hunter, because she had no idea. Right after that, she asked if he knew who that hunter was, who was going viral everywhere. They were calling him the god of marksmanship, the Hawkeyes of Jianshan. Sang-woon was confused for a moment, trying to understand what she was talking about, and Haeyeon asked if he really did not know. According to her, everyone was saying that the guy had killed more than 200 horned rabbits and did not respond to anyone. When people asked his name, he simply said that he was the Hawkeyes of Jianshan. Sang-woon felt a little nervous hearing that. Haeyeon said she thought it was amazing because her dream was to become a hunter. He asked if she was awakened as well. She said yes, that she had a license, but she was afraid of going to hunting grounds. Then she asked if she got a good score on the next test, he could take her to a safe hunting area at least once. He said it was not that difficult, but if she managed to get a good score, she should focus on university, not hunting grounds. Even so, he said he would take her, because he knew some safe places. Haeyeon asked him to promise with a pinky swear, and he did. Then he explained to himself that he was doing that as a good teacher, just to motivate her to study, nothing more. When the lesson ended, he talked to Haeyeon's mother, and said that at first he had been worried, but she was talented, and there was no reason for concern. Haeyeon, hidden behind the door, listened to everything. Her mother said it was very good to hear those words, even if they were few. He said goodbye, saying he would see them again on Monday. Her mother asked if he wanted to stay a little longer to eat before leaving, but he refused, saying he needed to go somewhere else. After he left, Haeyeon threw herself onto the bed, hugging her teddy bear, and said she had made a promise with him, because he was also a hunter. She said that was why the conversation had been so good. While talking, she summoned a small sphere of light in the palm of her hand. She said that at first she had not liked him much because he was someone her father knew, but he was kind, taught well, and was even a little handsome. Then she went back to focusing on her studies. When Sang-woon arrived in Jianshan, he noticed there were many people gathered to collect the bodies. He explained that he was there because he worked as a tutor and had other commitments. Junmo commented that it was the first time he had needed to call such a large number of collection teams for horned rabbits. The total had been 352 bodies, which was absurd. Junmo asked if he had checked the payment that had been sent. Sang-woon had his phone turned off, but when he checked, he saw he had received 30 million. He asked if the amount was correct. Junmo explained that his abilities were far above rank F, so he decided to pay 83% of the total value. Sang-woon sincerely thanked him. Then a masked man appeared, looking directly at number 1, and asking if that was the bastard's manager. Junmu realized he was pointing at the clone and said yes, asking what he wanted. The hunter replied that his prey had been stolen, that all the horned rabbits he had targeted had been taken down by that guy. He said he needed compensation conversation. Junmo commented that it seemed they had chosen the wrong place that time, and Sang-woon had not even imagined that this kind of situation existed there. That made him think for a moment until he had an idea. While the two spoke quietly, a hunter noticed and asked what they were whispering about, saying that he also had his scruples, but would accept settling it for 10%. Sang-woon just laughed and told him not to worry, because the man they were supposedly waiting for would not show up for a few days. Then he completely ignored the guy and told Junmo they could leave. The hunter, irritated, rushed at number 1, and that was exactly when Sang-woon put his plan into action. Number 1 took a punch to the face, and on purpose went flying, bouncing off the pillars and spitting blood to make the scene even more dramatic. The attacker got confused, saying he had not hit that hard. Meanwhile, the original Sang-woon was already recording everything and commenting that it was an act of violence in a sacred hunting ground, calling the other man malicious. The staff around them began to look at the hunter with disapproval. Sang-woon even added that it would be really bad if that video ended up on the internet, and asked why everyone could not just mind their own business. Under the pressure, the hunter finally gave in and backed off, and the two of them left the place. Later, the two of them were once again at a cafe, since they apparently liked coffee a lot. Junmo explained that the hunter who had started the fight was a member of the Hisun Guild, a huge guild with all kinds of people in it. Sang-woon asked how he could be so sure, and Junmo explained that ever since they entered the hunting ground for collection, that man had not stopped staring at him. To him, it could only be someone from Hisun. They had probably recognized the clone's face. Sang-woon said it must be revenge, and Junmo confirmed that they probably thought the clone was another hunter connected to the JTM agency. He even admitted that, even before, hunters recruited by the agency already suffered that kind of harassment, and that it was shameful to say, but almost none of them lasted long there. Currently, only a few F-class hunters remained in the agency, including Junmo himself, and he could not guarantee that there would not be new acts of sabotage coming from Haesheng. Sang-woon told him not to reconsider anything, because he already knew the risks. Even so, he assured that he would not let those bastards keep threatening him as well. He said he had a plan to become much stronger in a short time. After hearing the explanation, Junmo admitted he would never have thought of something like that, and suggested they meet the next day at 2 in the afternoon at the hunter's market. Sang-woon agreed immediately. The market dealt with all kinds of products, from weapons and armor to various equipment for hunters, and it had always been a very busy place. However, a large department store had entered the business and ended up dominating much of the industry, because it offered practically everything a hunter could want in one place. Later, Sang-woon was in one of those stores trying on a titanium armor that promised protection against any E-class monster. He found the armor stylish, light, and comfortable, and liked it a lot. He also examined a beautiful and very sharp dagger and asked if he could set aside 2 more identical sets. After that, Junmo asked if he also needed skills, since he was interested in something like a familiar ability. Sang-woon said yes, but he was not sure what they would find there. The two then entered a skill shop called Heritage, where they found a familiar ability that allowed the hunter to share senses and vision with their summons or pets. The problem was the price, 129 million just for the skill. Faced with that, Sang-woon asked if it was not time to strengthen the partnership between agent and hunter. Junmo understood immediately and asked if he wanted an advance. Sang-woon confirmed, and the agent said he might be able to lend around 50 million. Sang-woon apologized for the request and thanked him, saying he would pay it back later, and that if everything went as planned, he would make a lot of money soon. Later, he already had all the equipment ready and also had the familiar ability in hand. He held the instruction manual and read that he needed to infuse mana into the skill orb and activate it while maintaining physical contact with it. When he did that and pressed the orb's button, a burst of light completely enveloped him. For a moment it seemed dangerous, but soon the system informed him that he had absorbed the familiar ability. Now he could share senses with a chosen target. The orb simply disappeared in his hand, so it had worked. He called number 1 and number 2, who were already equipped, and said it was time to test it. Before that, he recalled the conversation he had with Junmo, when he asked what he thought about the hunting results. Junmo had said it was excellent, far above expectations. Sang said that no one would have imagined that result. His clones had half of his stats in energy, dexterity, and reaction time, but even so, one of them had hunted more than 300 rabbits alone. Even in the situation with the man from the Haesung Guild, he had ordered the clone to take the punch and react in an exaggerated way. He could have ordered it to fight back, but chose not to. Junmo concluded that even with lower stats, the clones had an absurd level of body control. Sang confirmed that was exactly it, and that he would use that advantage to the fullest. For the plan to work, they needed 2 different environments, one field to train long-range skills, and another for close combat. Number 1 and number 2 enrolled at the same time. The idea was simple: train like madmen until they surpassed their own limits. In the close-range field, a martial artist asked if he already wanted a duel. At the shooting range, another instructor asked if he had used a pistol before, and explained the difference between a pistol and a shotgun. Meanwhile, the staff master explained that it was necessary to strike the opponent's wrist to force them to drop the weapon, a technique known as disarming. Even so, the clones said they were ready. Number 1 picked up the staff, while number 2 took the pistol. When the training started, number 1 disarmed his opponent with ease and won the duel. At the same time, number 2 completely shattered the clay target, launched into the air with a single precise shot. They moved like machines, cold and efficient. Returning to the main plan, Sang explained that this was exactly why he needed the familiar ability. Dilmu asked if it was not just the ability to share vision with a familiar. Sang explained that it was not only vision vision. It included all senses: smell, touch, hearing, and even bodily sensations. If he used the ability while the clones were fighting or practicing shooting, he could absorb all of it. Later, he did exactly that. He focused all his mana and activated the ability while the clones trained. Suddenly, he was experiencing everything at once. He could feel the distance of combat, the angle of the joints, the balance of the body, the movement of the muscles, the flow of force, the breathing during the shot, the aim, the control of the weapon's recoil. He even felt the pressure of the air passing by the staff when the clone dodged, the smell of gunpowder after the shot, the impact of the recoil on the arm, and even the muscle fatigue. He was not physically moving. It was the clones executing everything, but since they had the same body as him, it was as if he was building muscle memory within himself. His strength and reaction time began to improve, so he decided to test it personally that same day. He first connected to number 1 and activated the familiar ability. Now he was truly fighting, sharing senses with the clone while facing the master. The man was strong, and the people at the academy became curious to see the trainer fight him directly. When they started, the exchanges with wooden staffs were fast on both sides. The master noticed that Sang lacked experience in his attacks, but realized that his defense was different. He was analyzing and validating each movement. Sang managed to block every strike and moved forward. The master realized that he had copied one of his techniques. The impact was strong. Soon after, Sang dodged another powerful blow and counterattacked. When he found himself cornered, the master ran up the wall, evaded, and disarmed Sang with a precise strike to the wrist. The students commented that the master was no ordinary person either, and the original Sang felt the pain in his own wrist through the connection. The master admitted it had been dangerous and asked if he wanted to continue. Sang mentally checked if number 1 was fine, and in that same instant, replicated the master's movement exactly, climbing the wall and attacking from above. He wanted another round. The master agreed, and at that moment, Sang switched the connection to number 2. He transferred the familiar ability to number 2, and at that moment, at the shooting range, there was a guy bragging loudly because he was destroying every clay disc. His girlfriend praised him, saying he was amazing while laughing proudly. Sang thought he would not say anything, because in reality, it was number 2 who had destroyed everything. Not that guy. He just kept focused on the shooting lesson. When another disc was launched into the air, he stabilized his upper body, kept his feet firm, rotated only his torso following the target's trajectory, aligned the sights, and shattered the clay disc with precision. He paid attention to every tiny detail, because he needed to absorb everything the clones were capable of doing. At the end of the day, he fully returned to his original body, and admitted that switching the connection between number 1 and number 2 was exhausting his body too much. His mana was almost gone, and he felt dizzy, needing to sit down and rest. While catching his breath, he thought about how absurd the clones' movements were. They did not hesitate and did not feel fear. Next time, he wanted to test what would happen if he tried to execute everything on his own, without relying only on the connection. While he was sitting, someone passing by stopped after recognizing him. It was Rion. Sang asked what she was doing there at that hour, and she said she had been studying at the library until shortly before. He teased her, saying that sounded like a lie. But while they were talking, some members of the Hisung Guild were watching from a distance, asking each other if it was really him, the bastard from the video. Going back a bit in time, the hunter who had tried to pick a fight with Song was being scolded by his own boss. He explained that he had only tried to intimidate a little, but ended up being recorded. The boss asked if the incident had really been filmed and irritated, told him to forget about it and never go near that field again. He said that if anything happened, it would have nothing to do with the Haesung Guild, because he was just a street thug, and then hung up on him. The hunter cursed, furious. Shortly after, a big guy approached, asking what had happened, since he had not seen him in a while. He told the whole story, and the big guy said he had already expected it would cause trouble, especially with him being so excited about joining the guild. Even so, they asked if there was any work for him. They said there were some part-time gigs, nothing special. At that moment, he spotted Sang talking to Heian, and said with certainty that it was that kid who had recorded the video. The big guy confirmed it was him, so the two decided to go talk to him. As they approached, Heian asked who those people were. Sang said he did not know, that he had never seen them before, but he recognized the hunter he had made a fool of with the video. Right away, he mentally called number 1 and number 2, then stood up and asked if he could help. The scarred man told him to stop pretending to be innocent, while the big guy told everyone to relax. He said he had heard about a video of his little brother making a mistake out of excitement, and asked if that was true. Then he told him to delete the video, and assured that they would leave peacefully. Sang almost handed over his phone, asking if they would really let him go if he deleted it. The big guy replied that he was not an idiot, that Sang would not leave unharmed anyway, and that he had been stupid for not deleting the video earlier. Sang then whispered to Haitian to run when he gave the signal. He said there was indeed a difference, because he was going to beat all of them. The men laughed at his confidence, and charged at him. Right away, he took a heavy beating, was knocked down, and rolled across the ground. He thought it had not worked as well as in training. Heiwan tried to protect him using her power, but he noticed she was trembling. The hunters asked if she was awakened as well, and the big guy mocked that no one needed to be afraid of a high school girl. When the big guy stepped forward, Heian fired a sphere of light that caused a small explosion. It was not enough to knock him down. It only tore his clothes. He tried to strike her, but Sang stepped in front and blocked the attack. He said it was not over yet, and countered with a straight punch. The big guy did not fall. He only stepped back in pain. The others rushed forward again. Sang realized he needed to use what he had learned from number 1. The clone did not focus on the opponent's opponent's weapon, but on body movements. He analyzed the first hunter and replicated the strike using the muscle memory he had absorbed. The punch knocked down the first bald man. The second hit Sang cleanly, but he responded with a double strike to the stomach, leaving the opponent out of breath. Even with his face swollen, he remained standing. The big guy commented that he actually knew how to fight. He said he had been hesitant to hit someone who could barely fight back, but now he would fight seriously. Sang himself felt pain in his wrist after the last attack. He had managed to hit the big guy, but the man was too strong. Even so, that blow had already made him stagger. Sang knew he could not be hit again. He rushed at that human bull and landed a few quick strikes. He was afraid, yes, but he used his speed to avoid being caught. He threw a straight punch, followed with a few hooks, trying to keep the pressure. Then the big guy decided to use his ability. He cracked all the bones and muscles in his body as if activating something far more dangerous, and said that Sang was dead now. Sang immediately realized that the next blow would be devastating, and that he had to dodge at all costs. But the bald man grabbed his leg for a second, just enough time for the big guy to land a brutal punch straight to his stomach. The impact threw him against a concrete wall. He spat blood, feeling the air leave his lungs. He tried to control his breathing, but thought that was the end. Just as the final blow was about to come down, Heian saved him by firing a sphere of light at the big guy's back. The other hunters immediately rushed at her. That was when number 1 and number 2 appeared, taking down the remaining attackers with precise movements. Sang stood up with difficulty and drew the big guy's attention, saying that his opponent was right there. The big guy charged at him again. Sang then replicated the movement that number 1 had learned during training. He climbed the concrete wall with agility and, while still in the air, sarcastically thanked the big guy for serving as a practice target. The next kick landed cleanly and finally brought down the leader of those criminals. When the fight ended, all 3 enemies were on the ground. At that moment, he felt the system notifications. His muscle strength, speed, endurance, and dexterity increased. The clone skill rose to level 3. The effort, however, came at a cost. Exhausted, he collapsed unconscious. The clones rushed to him in concern, and Heian also approached. Later, her hand was bandaged because of the excessive use of her ability. When he woke up, Sang asked why she had not run when she had the chance. Heian said she thought he had not really meant it. He thanked her, but said it had been very dangerous. She commented that she was surprised to discover that the famous rookie hunter was actually his clone. She recognized him immediately when he appeared. The eagle eye of Mount Wansang. Sang admitted it, but made it clear that he did not go around telling that to just anyone. She asked if he did not want to be famous. He replied that her mouth needed to be a tomb. He walked her home and asked if her hand was really fine. She said it had been the left one so she could still write. He commented that a student injured like that should maybe reduce her homework, and she replied that he should not remember that. Even so, Sang thanked her again, saying he had only won because she protected him. Heian said she had also played an important role, and that he could thank her properly by paying for barbecue. He agreed and promised to buy meat for her. She said that settled it. They had a promise. Then they said goodbye. The clones stared at Sang in silence. He told them to get back to work and stop slacking off. They replied that it was already late, and the training fields were closed. Sang then handed a branch to each of them and told them to train in the park anyway. 1 month after the incident, Sang contacted Junmo to say that the plan was working. Now he himself could hit targets with a pistol, and the clone skill had leveled up again, allowing him to summon a 3rd clone. Junmo congratulated him, saying that now he would learn even faster. Sang confirmed, and said his capabilities were much higher. His strength had reached 1.4, agility 1.2, endurance 1.0. Everything had increased a lot. He said Junmo would be surprised when he saw him. Then he asked if it was possible to reserve 3 rank E hunting fields for the next day. Junmo found the number unusual, but said it was possible to arrange. He asked for the time, and Sang said he wanted them for the afternoon of the next day. Everything was set. After ending the call, Sang organized the midnight training. Number 1 would be responsible for upper body training. Number 3 would train lower body. Number 2 would do cardio. They had to return by midnight. He started rushing them, telling them to go quickly. Only then did he notice they were taking their weapons. He told them to leave the weapons behind immediately, calling the 3 of them idiots. Later, the original Sang was at the computer, analyzing some lessons on how to kill monsters, watching tips and studying strategies. He realized that through the clones' training, they had learned very well. Unless the movements were physically impossible, they could copy and recreate almost anything. So he understood that he could study monster characteristics and the ideal ways to hunt them, and he started watching several video lessons and explanatory videos about different creatures. The next morning, the 3 clones returned very tired, but still full of energy, which made Sang realize they could endure a lot. He told them to take a shower and eat afterward. He had already analyzed the creatures they would face, such as giant rats, alien fish, and horned rabbits. Now he needed to check if they could actually hunt on their own. He began to follow each hunting attempt to get used to battles using the familiar ability, but since the mana consumption was very high, he had not been able to endure for long in his previous attempt. In the meantime, he received a message from Junmo saying he would arrive in 10 minutes. Sang told the 3 to finish eating and get ready. They were eating instant noodles straight from the pot. When Sang showed up with the 3 clones, Junmo admitted they looked quite intimidating now, and Sang replied that even he felt a bit uncomfortable with their appearance. He asked if the fields were ready, and Junmo confirmed that he had secured 3 locations close to each other. Sang then asked him to take care of things. Junmo asked if he was not going along, but Sang explained that he would stay behind to practice his familiar ability ability, and that he also needed to acquire his mana breathing technique. Once he was alone, he began doing his part. He inhaled slowly, breathed calmly, relaxed his body and focused on his senses, trying to remember the feeling of using mana. When he had used the familiar ability while summoning the clones, he had felt as if the energy was leaving his body and circulating. He recalled that sensation, focused on it, and finally managed to acquire the meditation skill. With meditation stabilizing his mind, he could relieve some of the mental fatigue, as well as increase the speed of mana growth and its recovery. The effect of mana breathing was also enhanced. Meanwhile, in the fish hunting field, a hunter wondered why that creature was there. He was crawling, missing half of one leg. That was supposed to be a rank F hunting field, where he only intended to hunt some alien fish, but he ended up encountering a massive creature, a giant fish wielding a butcher knife, which was chasing him to finish him off. At that moment, Junmo was taking the last clone to the final hunting field, the sewage treatment station. He explained that it was where the alien fish were found, famous for their extremely strong jaws, and told number 3 to be careful. Then he sent a message to the original Sang, informing him that the clones were already in position. He thought that hunting in 3 places at the same time was an incredible ability, and that, depending on the results of that hunt, the hunter industry might start to get stirred up. Meanwhile, at Sang's house he celebrated thinking he was a genius, but soon realized he had made a mistake, because meditation and mana breathing were 2 different skills. Mana breathing seemed to be much harder to acquire. Even so, he focused again, and this time, used the familiar ability. When he connected to number 1's body, he saw a rat being killed, and was startled, but realized it was just the clone eliminating the creature without any problem. With the guide watching, soon another horde of giant rats appeared, and Sang prepared to learn from it. He remembered the video lesson he had watched about giant rats, where the hunter explained that they were one of the most annoying rank F monsters, and that the ideal approach was to form a group to face them. If there was no choice but to fight alone, it was possible to take advantage of the fact that they charged in a straight line, so maintaining distance and shooting would be effective. That was exactly what number 1 did, firing at the rats. In the video, the hunter had also explained that if the fight turned into close combat, it was important to know that their skulls were quite hard, so the best target was the spine. Number 1 killed another rat using only the knife, but realized that the strength of the giant rats lay in their numbers. The hunter had said that with proper study it was possible to deal with them, since it was just a matter of experience. Then number 1 drew the pistol and began shooting at the rats' spines, showing that his aim was truly very good. Later, already at another hunting spot, the original Sang Woon realized that his clones could only hunt using his techniques. They did not feel fear or surprise. They did not evaluate the level of their opponents. They simply advanced and killed. He decided to experiment with hunting using the familiar skill, and because of that, he began to feel everything along with them. His attributes increased: strength, agility, mana, endurance, and dexterity, while the 3 continued hunting non-stop. That day he was determined to practically drain the rank F fields. Meanwhile, in one of those fields, 2 hunters found the silence strange. One commented that the place was too quiet. They should have already encountered several monsters. Along the way, they ended up coming across several carcasses scattered across the ground. They hurried, ordering everything to be collected and placed into boxes as quickly as possible, trying to take advantage of what was left. In the alien fish hunting field, the situation was very different. A torn-off human arm drew attention, and something moved in the bushes. Suddenly, something was thrown, but it was only a fish head used as bait. The real creature was behind the clone. The next strike tore off number 3's arm, and Sang Woon felt all the pain because of the familiar skill. The connection was cut by the intensity of the pain, but he focused, because it was not the time to panic. He asked Jinmo what the name of the field was, where number 3 was hunting, and received the answer that it was the sewage treatment station. He immediately asked for number 1 and number 2 to be taken there, because something serious had happened during the hunt. Shortly after, the creature killed number 3. When Sang Woon arrived at the station, the connection had already been completely cut, but he still had time to use the skill again. Upon arriving at the field, he showed his identification. Jinmo was already there together with number 1 and number 2. Sang Woon explained that number 3 had disappeared, and that there was a monster different from the common alien fish. It was huge, very powerful. It had a fish head, but arms and legs from another creature. Jinmo recognized the danger, and said they needed to alert the authorities and temporarily close the area, because that was the Fishman, a rank D monster. Even a full group of E-class hunters would not be enough to defeat it. Sang Woon agreed that security should be alerted and the entrance restricted, but not at that moment. He wanted to wait for his clones to enter first. Jinmo asked what he intended to do, and Sang Woon explained that he could not simply sit and wait. He asked him to trust him, just as he trusted his own clones. When the 2 entered the field, Sang activated the familiar skill again. The clones advanced through the forest calmly until they found the Fishman in a clearing, devouring an alien fish. Sang knew that despite having the status of an E-class hunter, his clones only received 53% of that, remaining at most at F-class level. Even so, the monster was injured, and considering the clone's abilities, there was still a chance. The 2 aimed at the head and fired to kill, but the bullets simply hit the Fishman's skin and had no effect at all. The creature leaped from far away in their direction. Number 1's counterattack with his sword caused only a scratch, and the monster retaliated with a butcher knife, almost killing both of them. Number 1's sword got stuck in a tree, which seemed to make the fight in the middle of the forest harder because of the size of the weapon, but he simply used enough strength to knock the entire tree down. Even so, the shots and attacks continued to be ineffective. The Fishman threw a punch that sent number 2 flying into a tree. Sang began to wonder how he could kill that creature if the attacks did not work. That was when he remembered the 2 shots he had fired earlier. The first had caused no damage at all, but the second had injured it. He realized he needed to aim exactly at the previous wound. He fired at the same spot, and this time the fishman screamed in pain. Even injured, it continued running toward the clones, but now number 1 and number 2 were ready to focus their shots on the wounded area. The shots finally began to cause real damage, leaving the monster covered in blood. The creature's blood ended up igniting its own sword, and the flaming attack hit number 1 directly, knocking him down as he spat blood. Sang understood that the sword reacted to the monster's own blood, which meant that the more injured it was, the more dangerous it became. Number 1 still tried to trade blows in close combat, but the difference in power was enormous. The creature pierced him with the blade, impaling the clone. Even so, number 1 held the sword embedded in his own body to prevent it from being pulled out, determined to cause as much damage as possible before falling. Even while being brutally torn apart by the fishman's claws, he kept fighting back, turning his own sacrifice into one last desperate attempt to weaken the monster. They continued exchanging blows for quite some time, already completely exhausted until the fishman lowered its guard for a second. At that moment, number 2 appeared to block a fatal attack, and together the two managed to open extremely severe wounds on the rank D creature. The bleeding began to take its toll, the monster's movements became slower, and after a few moments it finally succumbed, falling dead in the forest clearing. Sang thought it was finally over because the clones could no longer even take a step forward and the bullets had run out. For him it was more than enough for that day, but when he breathed in relief and looked again, he realized the creature was no longer there. It had escaped. The tracks led straight toward the portal. Outside the sewage treatment station, one of the soldiers informed the hunters that the entrance was restricted and that no one could enter at that moment. He said the association would send hunters soon, and that more information would be released as soon as they had updates. Dumo realized Sang needed to hurry, but at that moment some soldiers went on alert because the monster was running toward the portal. They opened fire on the creature, but the shots caused no damage at all. Before the fishman could pierce someone with its flaming blade, number 2 threw a knife directly at the back of the creature's neck, creating an opening. At the same instant, the real Sang advanced and drove his knife into the monster's forehead. After an intense close combat struggle to see who could endure more, he finally managed to bring the creature down for good. Later, the specialized team arrived at the sewage treatment station, and one of the members informed by phone that he would send a detailed report afterward. When the team saw the fishman's corpse, they were surprised. One of the soldiers explained that there really had been a rank D monster there, but that a hunter inside the portal had managed to kill it. The man from the association questioned why there was a rank D hunter in a rank F field, and the soldier clarified that they were mistaken, because as far as they knew the one who killed the creature was a rank F hunter. The association representative analyzed the body and noticed that several attacks had been concentrated on the exact same wound, deducing that it had been done to deal damage without the use of special weapons. He even wondered if it was truly possible to hit a moving monster with such precision. Even so, he informed the station employee that they would first check if there were other rank D monsters remaining in the portal. When he stood in front of the portal, he seemed uncertain about what he would find there. For Sang, it would have been much easier to simply say that he alone had killed the monster, instead of trying to explain that whole situation. Later, already far from there, Sang Woon began to realize that he had unlocked several abilities at once. He obtained Dash, which increased his speed for a short period, Projectile, which strengthened his pistol shots, and Regeneration, which was now at 0.4. He also unlocked Power Strike, capable of concentrating all his strength into a single attack. In addition, Strength, Dexterity, and Endurance had also increased after that fight. Sang Woon was impressed by the sudden progress. Number 1 and number 2 had only survived thanks to regeneration, and Jinmo asked how the clones were doing. Sang Woon explained that they were severely injured, but that there was still a cooldown before he could summon them again. He also commented that if they recovered on their own, it could help increase his regeneration stat even more. The agent stated that it had been incredible. After all, he had taken down a rank D monster. Sang Woon admitted that he felt a bit embarrassed talking about it, because it had been extremely dangerous and he really did not know if he could win. Even so, Jinmo said he was not exaggerating, and that after that he would probably already be able to hunt a rank D monster alone. While they talked, Sang Woon remembered the fishman's short sword and went to the corpse, almost grabbing the weapon directly. Jinmo's agent warned him to let a clone pick it up first, since it could be a cursed item. He asked if he could not use the sword, and the agent explained that cursed items were rare and could be worth a lot of money. Sang Woon thought that was great and decided that the clone would keep the weapon for now. He also asked if the collection team would gather the remaining items, and received confirmation that yes, since a rank D monster could yield high expectations. He then showed a magic crystal he had found, asking if it was some kind of rare item, but Jinmo explained that it was a low-level jewel with almost no value, capable of increasing attributes but full of side effects and impossible to use safely on a normal person. After that, Sang Sang-woon decided to go home to rest, while Jinmo handled the collection. When he arrived, he found the two clones completely destroyed, and admitted to himself that a lot had happened that day. First, he decided to summon number 3 again, ordering him to equip himself and train while the others rested. Then he analyzed the two items he had brought, the fishman's short sword, and the crystal, which was a low-level strength jewel. He could use it to permanently increase his strength by 0.005, but the problem was the side effect, since repeated use could turn him into a monster. Sang-woon thought about it carefully, because a permanent stat increase was extremely valuable. Normally the clone's injuries did not affect him directly, but he began to imagine what could happen if he ended up turning into a monster along with one of them. He pictured himself approaching Jinmo to talk, and getting shot in the head for looking like a threat. For now, he decided he would not use the crystal. The next item was the sword. Sang-woon opened the box carefully, but did not touch the weapon, remembering Jinmo's agent's warning. He even thought that maybe it would be better not to use it at all, and simply sell it, but decided to test it first. He told number 2 to pick up the sword. When the clone lifted it, nothing seemed to happen at first, but soon he informed his master that he could hear a voice. The moment Sang-woon activated the familiar skill to share the senses, he was hit by a deafening chorus of voices screaming to kill, asking for blood repeatedly, as if the sword had a will of its own. He felt bothered by the noise, and wondered how number 2 was not reacting to it, because to him it was unbearably loud. He soon concluded that the clone was not mentally affected in the same way as a normal human, so he decided that for now, number 2 could use the sword. Shortly after, a new system screen appeared informing him that his regeneration had increased again. He realized that resting was helping the clones recover, and that since 2 of them had been in critical condition, the effect seemed to be amplified. Even so, he knew he would have to hunt again the next day, but in that state the clones would not be able to fight. Because of that, he said that night the 3 of them would meditate together. As he began meditating, he thought that the next day he would have to return to college. The following morning, already on campus, he felt like the vacation had passed in the blink of an eye, probably because he had been busy the whole time, improving his stats, and almost never letting the clones truly rest. Now, standing there among ordinary people, he felt almost lonely. When he entered the classroom for the first lesson, he found his friend Gyeongdo, who commented that he did not even know he was enrolled in that class, and that he had chosen the subject because the professor was generous with grades. Sang-woon replied that he did not think he cared that much about it. Gyeongdo asked if he had been exercising regularly, and Sang-woon said yes, that he was consistent. Unlike his friend, some girls in the room started whispering when they realized that it was Sang-woon, commenting that he used to not be fat before, and that they had barely recognized him. Gyeongdo joked that he was popular, and Sang-woon replied that actually no one greeted him because they did not recognize him. He himself began to wonder if he had really changed that much, but Gyeongdo said that even his own parents would have trouble recognizing him. Sang-woon said he was thinking about going home for a while, and his friend said he had almost not recognized him when he saw him on the street the other day, suggesting that they could go out for a drink after class. Sang-woon refused, explaining that he already had plans because he had made a promise. Gyeongdo started teasing him, saying he was a traitor and must have gotten himself a girl. Sang-woon asked him to speak more quietly, saying it was not like that, but his friend commented that everyone had already heard. That was when he realized that practically all his acquaintances were in the same class, which made him feel a bit embarrassed. Meanwhile, at the World Hunter Association, President Michael Harris received information that the Oracle had predicted a disaster. The prediction indicated the creation of a portal and the invasion of hundreds of monsters. Michael Harris asked if the location and date had already been confirmed, and the employee explained that what they knew so far was that the highest rank of the monsters could reach A, and that there was a high possibility that the portal would appear in the coming days. The likely location would be South Korea. In Korea, an emergency meeting was called. 2 guild leaders ended up meeting in the hallway, and the collision seemed intentional on her part. It was Miho, master of the Yahello Guild, the 6th largest in Korea. She commented that something big was happening. After all, he was there as well. Wontae replied that he could say the same about her. When they arrived at the room, they realized that all the other leaders were already present. Heesung greeted Wontae with irony, while Miho murmured that the old man was arrogant. Heesung provoked him by asking why he was so cold and mentioned the Odin Tower, saying that Team 1 of the Canis Guild had gone there recently, but that no news had been heard for days. He said that he could endure anything except curiosity, and asked how things were going. The leader of Guild number 2, Kim Il-gon of Taehyang, intervened, saying that this was already disrespectful. Heesung replied that he just wanted to know if the results had been good enough, and mocked that his memory was no longer as good as before. Wontae was clearly irritated by the subject. At that moment, the leader of the Korean Hunters Association, Oh Byung-hun, a small and friendly old man, entered the room and asked if anything had happened while he was away. Wontae simply sat down, visibly irritated, taking a deep breath. Oh Byung-hun noticed the tension but chose not to comment and took his seat at the table. He thanked all the guild masters for attending, and explained that the country had received a disaster alert from the World Hunter Association. According to the Oracle, a portal would soon open, and a massive group of monsters would invade Korea. Since there was suspicion of a rank A monster, the association requested the cooperation of all the best guilds in the country. When they asked where the portal would appear appear? Oh Byung-hun replied that they still did not have that information, and that it could appear anywhere in Korea. Kim Il-gon questioned whether he was suggesting covering the entire country while they waited, and Oh Byung-hun explained that that was exactly why the meeting was happening, because the only certainty was that the disaster would occur soon. One of the masters complained that they no longer had enough members even for their own demands, let alone to protect the entire country. Another asked whether the hunters who were dispatched would receive extra payment, and Oh Byung-hun was momentarily left without an answer. That was when Wante presented a proposal. Each guild would prepare a group of hunters ready to be sent immediately in case of emergency, monitoring the regions close to their base. When the disaster actually happened, all guilds would gather at the location and focus their full strength there, without exception. He made it clear that any guild that refused to cooperate would be severely punished, saying this while looking directly at Shin Hee-sung. Oh Byung-hun considered the proposal reasonable and asked if anyone had another idea. Since no one presented an alternative, he suggested they vote. Several hands were raised, including Miho's and even Haesung's. With that, they decided to follow Wante's proposal, with each guild protecting its own region and maintaining constant cooperation with the others. At the end of the day, Sang-woon was even a bit excited because the class had gone by quickly. As he crossed the campus, he noticed Haejun being approached by a guy who kept insisting that she leave, but at least give him her phone number. She had already said she had a boyfriend, but the guy did not seem to accept it. When Sang-woon approached and asked why she was there, Haejun immediately grabbed his arm and started walking away, saying she had been waiting for her boyfriend. Later, already far from the guy, Sang-woon asked if he had been pressuring her for her number. Haeyeon explained that she had made up the excuse about having a boyfriend to get out of the situation, and that he had shown up at the perfect moment. She also made a point of saying that she did not actually have a boyfriend. He was a bit caught off guard, but ended up asking why she had asked him to buy barbecue that day. Haeyeon explained that it was the school's anniversary, and that was why there had been no classes, and he commented that now he understood why she was not wearing her uniform. She teased him, asking if he had been checking out her casual clothes and if he wanted her number, and he replied that he already had her number, calling her a brat. At that moment, Sang-woon's phone vibrated with a notification informing him that all fees had been deducted and that the payment had been deposited. He had just received 50 million all at once. He immediately thought about the clones and told Haeyeon that she could eat as much meat as she wanted. She asked if he was sure, since she ate a lot, but he told her not to worry about the cost. At the barbecue restaurant, the food was excellent, but Haeyeon commented that the place seemed expensive and asked again if everything was really okay. Sang-woon insisted that she eat without worrying, saying that he was apologizing for the injury to her hand. He even ordered more meat, as if it were for 4 people. While they were eating, however, something unexpected interrupted the calm atmosphere. Several alerts started appearing on their phones, and on the restaurant television. It was an official warning of danger due to a monster invasion through a portal. A disaster alert was issued across the entire country, instructing the population to check evacuation point locations and prepare emergency supplies. The announcement made it clear that it was not a drill. At the same time, Gyeongdo was still complaining about Sang-woon, calling his friend a traitor. One of their classmates commented that just because he had plans did not necessarily mean he was with a girl, but they ended up walking right in front of the barbecue restaurant where he was with Haeyeon, which only made things worse. Before they could argue further, everyone received the same alert notifications on their phones. Gyeongdo warned that something very serious was happening, and quickly the internet began to collapse with comments about the disaster. One of their friends said it was too strange for a disaster of that level because the place seemed far too quiet. At that moment, Sang-woon stepped out of the restaurant and asked what they were doing there. One of the friends held the other back and said they were just walking around the area, trying to act natural while tension took over everyone. The annoyed one asked who that woman was, and immediately said she was his girlfriend, leaving Haetan completely flustered. Sang-woon explained that it was nothing like that she was just his student, and that he had only paid for a meal for her. After that, he introduced everyone properly, and Gyeongdo called Jongseong over. Then they handed all the leftover meat from the outing to Haetan and told her to go home and eat with her parents, because they must be worried. Haezeon still asked if he was sure they were just going to leave like that in the middle of that situation, but Sang-woon said of course, because her parents would be angry if she kept wandering around while a disaster was happening. His friends kept teasing him, calling him an old grump, but Sang-woon told everyone to shut up, and said he was just being responsible. He told each of them to go home, including the 3 clones, lightly cursing at them like he always did. After that, he walked down the street and noticed that many people were acting as if nothing was happening, some drunk, others casually walking around, even with the disaster alert active, and that seemed very strange to him. Suspicious. Sang-woon contacted an agent and asked if there was any more specific information about the disaster. The agent replied that officially there was nothing detailed, but that the association planned to maintain that state of alert for at least 3 months. Sang-woon thought that was too long and questioned it, so the agent explained that they did not know when or where the portal would open, but that the number of monsters could be very large and extremely dangerous, including the possibility of ranked monsters appearing. Sang-woon commented that if it was that dangerous, the association should release more information and reinforce that people needed to be careful. The agent explained that the problem was precisely the duration, because 3 months of restrictions would cause a huge impact on the economy and on important facilities if citizens were prevented from working, and the association would end up being held responsible for those damages. That was why some information was being intentionally withheld. He also said said that he was heading to a shelter at that moment, that hunting fields would probably be blocked, and that working would be practically impossible in that situation. Sang-woon told him to stay safe, because he would also be with his family. When he returned home and asked how the clones were doing, number 2 said he was feeling much better, while number 1 still coughed up blood and said that at least he was not dead. The original Sang-woon realized that his skill had already recharged, so he resummoned number 1 so he would not keep suffering like that. He even told him to put on his cap so he would not feel disoriented. Shortly after, number 3 came back running from his walk, and Sang-woon said that all of them would go to his parents' house. He knocked on the door, and when his mother answered, she asked if it was really Sang-woon. He confirmed that it was, that he was her son. His mother immediately started asking if he was okay, if he had been starving, because he looked like he had lost a lot of weight. His father appeared right behind her, wanting to know if it was really him. The one who got truly excited was his sister, who complained that he had been gone for so long, and said he should keep in touch more. But when she looked more closely at his face, she became confused, and asked who he was. Sang-woon thought that maybe Gyeongdo had been right about that, and then his mother asked who those masked people were and why they were with him. Sang-woon explained that they were not friends, and told all of them to remove their masks. When they revealed their faces, they were all identical to him. Later he calmly explained that it was part of his cloning ability, and said that he had participated in the Awakening program about a month earlier. His mother said she had heard that many young people were joining the program, but she had not imagined that he had gone as well. His sister commented that she also wanted to participate one day. His father asked if he was working as a hunter, and Sang-woon said yes, that he did not want to hide it anymore. His mother showed concern, asking if it was not dangerous, but he explained that his ability was very good, and that was exactly why he was not in direct danger, because the clones handled almost all the hunting. Finally, he warned them that a disaster alert had been issued, and that they should go to a shelter immediately. His father replied that they were already packing things as a precaution in case something really happened, but that they still intended to observe the situation before leaving for good. Sang-woon asked why they were still hesitating since it could happen at any moment. His father replied that he still had to work the next day, and that it was not possible to simply pack everything and leave the house all of a sudden. Sang-woon kept thinking that only he and a few others truly knew how desperate the situation was, while the rest of society remained strangely calm. If they at least clearly announced the monster invasion, maybe people would take it more seriously. Even so, he decided he would stay with his parents that night. His mother asked about college, and he replied that he had received a message saying classes were suspended, which was a lie, but he preferred not to worry anyone. He also took the opportunity to hand over the leftover barbecue meat so they could eat together, and he thought that he really should have visited his parents earlier. His mother asked if the clones did not need to eat as well, and Sang-woon said yes, but that the meat was too good, so he would give them rice and carrots instead. While the table was full of food, the clones were stuck eating only rice from a bowl. Ji-woon commented that he would gain weight again if he kept eating like that, and he replied that he would not. His mother said it had been a long time since they had all shared a meal together like that, and Sang-woon smiled, happy to be reunited with his family. But at that exact moment, something struck the building with force, throwing everyone to the ground. Shortly after, Sang-woon was the first to wake up. Through the massive opening in the apartment wall, he saw a horde of giant monsters invading Korea. One of them, which looked like a dragon, breathed fire and completely destroyed a nearby building. He ran to wake up his parents and Ji-woon, and noticed that number 1's equipment was lying on the ground. Number 1 had sacrificed himself to protect them from the explosion. Number 2 was intact, but number 3 had lost half of his left arm. Number 1 had disappeared. Number 3 was severely injured, and the portal had opened much faster than anyone had expected. When the family finally got up, Sang-woon said they needed to leave immediately. His father still worried about the house, but he replied that it no longer mattered because a portal had opened nearby. Outside, people were being killed by creatures or crushed by cars and debris, while more monsters kept emerging from the portal in the sky. Inside the apartment, they quickly gathered whatever supplies they could. Ji-woon grabbed number 1's equipment to protect herself. Suddenly, a creature fell into the apartment, already nearly dead. Sang-woon realized that many were falling from the sky because the portal had opened up above, and the monsters that could not fly were simply dropping. In a way, that was actually an advantage. He took the opportunity to finish off the creature that had fallen there. When they tried to leave the building, they realized the door was locked. Sang-woon told everyone to move aside, used his powerful strike ability, broke the lock with a baseball bat, and kicked the door hard, sending it flying away. The family was impressed. When they reached the street, they found complete calamity, everything destroyed and chaotic. He asked where the nearest shelter was, and his father said it was 2 kilometers away, but the path was full of monsters. Sang-woon did not know if he could cover that distance while protecting everyone. Ji-woon then remembered that there were underground tunnels with a shelter nearby. He asked if it was close to home, and after confirming it was, decided that they would go there. Before moving on, he heard someone calling for help. It was a man trapped in debris, knocked down by a D-class monster, a troll. His father said they needed to think rationally, and that they were not in a position to help others. They needed to get to the shelter. Sang-woon knew that number 3 was not in condition to fight, and that he could not rely on him. He only had number 2. The man kept asking for help, and Sang-woon thought that he was not a clone who could simply reappear later. If he died there, he would die for real. When the family started going down the stairs, he told them to go ahead and close the door downstairs. He ordered number 2 to follow him quickly, and told number 3 to protect the family until the end. Ji-woon asked if he had gone crazy, because all they had had to do was look outside to see the chaos. His father asked if he was really going to do that. Sang-woon replied that he was a hunter, and then he and number 2 advanced toward the creature. Ji-woon became desperate, but number 3 held her back. Monsters were literally falling from the sky. In that situation, there was only one thing a hunter could do. Sang-woon blocked the troll's first strike and told number 2 to take the man to a safe place. He thought that a hunter's job was to kill monsters. He faced the gigantic troll with nothing but a baseball bat, provoking the creature to come at him. Number 2 managed to free the man trapped in the debris, who ran away, thanking them repeatedly. As he faced the troll head-on, Sang-woon realized just how large it really was. Number 2 drew his weapon, and the original Sang-woon took the strength jewel. They needed to use every possible means. Then he ordered number 2 to devour the jewel. When that happened, the clone's body began to transform, taking on a monstrous red-skinned appearance, resembling a half-dragon, ready to face the troll on equal terms. Sang-woon asked number 2 if he was still on his side, and the clone confirmed that he was. That was when he realized it had worked, because his own strength had also increased permanently, without any side effects. Only number 2 had suffered the consequences. Even so, that meant it was time for the hunt. The troll dragged its massive club across the ground and delivered a spinning strike that destroyed part of the floor. Sang-woon dodged both the impact and the grab that followed. Number 2 advanced with the cursed sword and cut off the troll's arm with ease, as if it were butter. The creature roared in pain, but instead of weakening, it became even more furious. Sang-woon kept dodging, thinking that fortunately that enemy was much slower than the fishman he had faced before. Taking advantage of his speed, he climbed up the creature's body until he reached its head and struck with all his strength. But the troll blocked the attack using the very arm that had been cut off, which was already regenerating. Not only did it block, it also countered as if it were completely intact. Sang-woon had not expected such absurd regeneration. The skin was not resistant. Number 2 could cut through it easily. The real problem was that the wounds closed within seconds. He realized it would be impossible to win by causing only superficial damage, so he told number 2 to bring it down for a moment. The clone cut deeply into the creature's thigh, and the troll dropped to its knees. In that opening, the original Sang-woon shot both of the monster's eyes, saying that even with great regeneration, that would at least impair its vision for a few seconds. With the enemy temporarily blinded, number 2 advanced and unleashed multiple cuts across the creature's entire body at the same time. When the troll's eyes regenerated, it found Sang-woon already prepared for the final blow. The next strike with the baseball bat completely crushed the enemy's head. After the victory, Sang-woon felt his body ache. His hand was throbbing from the impact of the ability, but he knew the side effect was worth it. That creature was as strong as the fishman. He told number 2 that they could go inside now, because his sister must already be feeling sick with worry. Only then did he realize he had lost his phone and asked to borrow the clones, joking that with that monstrous appearance, number 2 might end up getting kicked out of the shelter. But the situation on the streets was worse than he had imagined. There were far more monsters appearing, and people in danger everywhere. He knew he would have to help. Meanwhile, farther away, the real threat was a gigantic creature similar to Godzilla, spewing fire in all directions. Finally, the Rank 9 Red Fire Guild appeared to face the monster and protect the population. The Rank 7 Scorpion Guild was also present, and together they executed an impressive coordinated attack. Other major guilds began to arrive as well. Wante, along with the Keenest Guild, was already approaching. Their aircraft alone was capable of taking down several creatures with its weapons. One of the members reported that the Megalosaurus was in another direction. Wante assessed the situation and decided that since many guilds were already focused on that creature, it would be a waste of resources to join them. They chose to prioritize evacuating survivors. From above, even in the middle of the calamity, Wante could still see some hunters taking advantage of the chaos to steal crystals and belongings. The pilot reported that there were many survivors, 700 meters to the north. Wante ordered them to head there immediately. That was when he spotted Sang-woon and another person fighting multiple creatures at the same time. He thought those boys were holding up very well, but that the number of monsters was too high for them alone. Without hesitation, Wante put on his mask and jumped from the aircraft to help them. Already quite exhausted, Sang-woon did not expect to face so many enemies at once. Several goblins were surrounding him, and especially the civilians who could not defend themselves. He shouted for them to run to the underground shelter immediately, but one of the men said there were monsters behind them as well. Sang-woon told number 2 to cover the rear, while he himself stayed on the front line using the pistol to hold back the approaching monsters. He could no longer use his precise strike because of the high energy consumption. Suddenly, a new threat emerged from the rubble, a gigantic bird that drove its beak into the ground and unleashed a rain of magma toward the civilians. Without hesitation, number 2 used his own body to protect them, enduring the direct impact to ensure no one was hit. Sang-woon remained standing, even with his arms completely scorched. The creature kept spewing magma non-stop, until it was crushed by the paw of a massive monstrous tiger, an even more terrifying being that made even the goblins flee in fear. Sang-woon thought he was done for when the tiger lunged to bite him, but the attack never reached him because someone killed the monster before it could happen. The one who appeared was Park Wante, who asked if everything was alright there. Meanwhile, in the underground shelter, Ji-won was still arguing with number 3, trying to go out to see how her brother was doing. The clone stopped her, saying he could not allow it. She argued that he was a clone of Sang-won and should protect the original body, but number 3 replied that he always prioritized commands, and the order was to protect the family. The father asked Ji-won to stop, because the other people in the shelter were becoming frightened by the argument. She asked if no one was worried about what was happening outside, and number 3 replied that her brother would return soon, that she just needed to trust him. He added that he himself was proof of Sangwon's ability, and that as long as he was there, it meant the original was still alive. He was strong and worked as a hunter, and if they went out now, they would only get in the way. It was not the time to act on emotion. Jae-woon tried to calm herself, but suddenly, someone started screaming outside the shelter asking for help. One of the people said that whoever was outside did not seem to know the shelter's password. Another commented that they should not open the door. Even so, the voice kept begging for help. Sangwon's mother suggested that it might be the man he had saved earlier. The father said the camera footage was too dark to be sure. Jae-woon, driven by urgency, decided to open the door, believing it could be him, but the moment she opened it, she saw that the person was dead. The one who had called for help was actually a monster that mimicked human voices, a screaming firefly of rank B that perfectly imitated cries for help. The creature thanked them for the help with the same false voice. Inside the shelter, despair spread instantly. People ran toward a dead end, while number 3 reacted quickly and rushed toward the monster. His goal was not to deal damage, but to stop the next attack. The creature pierced the clone's chest with its claw, hitting directly through the heart, but because it was so large, it also struck Ji-woon in the stomach, and she collapsed immediately, bleeding heavily. Even gravely injured, number 3 had the presence of mind to shoot the shelter's security panel, activating the emergency protocol that would close the doors. He then used all the strength he had left to throw the creature outside. The doors shut, leaving the clone alone with the monster on the outside. Outside, Won-tae apologized to Sang-woon for arriving late. When Sang-woon saw who was offering help, he realized it was probably the man who had organized the awakening program he had taken part in. He had no idea he was that strong. Even so, he accepted the help and introduced himself as Jung Sang-woon. Won-tae said he had seen what he did, that he saved those people and fought until the end, when he could have run away. Sang-woon replied that he would not do that to innocent people. Won-tae commented that in a situation like that, it was easy for people's conscience to break, and that what he did was impressive. Sang-woon felt embarrassed by the praise. Then Won-tae remembered something. When he had jumped down from the aircraft, he saw a hunter protecting people and then disappearing, leaving only clothes behind. Right after that, he struck the tiger in the neck. Now he was curious to know who that other person was. He asked if Sang-woon was a hunter. He replied that he was, but that he had not been one for very long. When Won-tae asked what his ability was, Sang-woon suddenly lost the connection with number 3. Immediately, he apologized, saying his family was in danger. Won-tae warned that it was risky to go alone, and ordered the Keenest rescue team to descend immediately to provide support. Sang-woon took the cursed sword that number 2 had. As soon as he held the weapon, it began whispering in his mind, telling him to kill without stopping. He told the sword to shut up and activated his dash ability to reach the shelter as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the guilds were still fighting the Megalosaurus, which remained standing, resisting the attacks. It was clear they needed more firepower. Not even the leader of the Scorpion Guild could pierce the creature's thick skin with poison. The Fire Mage commented that this was not the time to compete with each other, but to unite their strength to bring down the monster before it destroyed even more of the city. They said they needed to work together to take that thing down, but then Haesung approached, asking why he should cooperate. He said he had only come because he heard there was a lot of money involved in that chaos, and that absolute power did not need teamwork. Without waiting for an answer, he summoned a rain of meteors over the gigantic creature, lighting up the sky in the middle of the chaos. Meanwhile, inside the emergency shelter, Ji-woo's father was trying to perform first aid with the help of her mother. Ji-woo said it hurt too much, struggling to stay conscious. The situation was already desperate, but the creature managed to tear open the shelter door, repeating pleas for help with a false voice, saying it hurt and that it did not want to die like that. Ji-woo's parents stood in front of her, accepting that they might die there. That was when Sang-woon appeared, charging in like a demon, with the voices of the cursed sword echoing in his head, demanding blood. When he saw his sister in that state, he attacked with everything he had. He and the creature struck each other at the same time, and whoever was faster would gain the advantage. The one who ended up taking the worst damage was Sang-woon himself. His shoulder was hit directly, and blood sprayed everywhere. The creature even tried to say Ji-woo's name, which only made his anger grow. He advanced without thinking about the consequences, willing to sacrifice himself if necessary. Before he could take another fatal blow, a hunter from Won-tae's team pulled him out of range. She said he had shown good initiative, but the injuries were severe. Meanwhile, Won-tae took over the fight and kicked the creature away from the shelter. The hunter assessed the boy's condition and said the injuries were terrible, and that he was entering a frenzy. She used mana transfer to force him to lose consciousness and drop the cursed sword, which continued whispering for him to kill. Won-tae asked how he was, and she replied honestly that he was not doing well at all. Even so, Sang-woon resisted the mana transfer and tried to stay awake. The hunter told him to stop talking because his wounds would open even more. He insisted that his sister was injured back there and asked them to save her first. Won-tae assured him that neither he nor his sister would die that day. He then wrapped the sword in blue flames, telling the boy to rest because it would all be over soon. Shortly after, Sang-woon finally lost consciousness. Meanwhile, in the Korean Association building, Director Byung-hun was in critical condition, remembering everything that had happened before. Before the meeting with the masters of the most important guilds, Haesung had appeared in the director's path to talk. The guard tried to stop him, but Byung-hun allowed him to speak. Haesung asked if they were really going to evacuate people immediately. The director said yes, that he would announce the expected damage damage from the invasion and order evacuation to minimize losses. Haesung questioned whether he really intended to tell the whole truth, since they did not even know when the invasion would happen. He asked if he would announce that an A-class monster would appear, and whether he would shut down the entire country for 3 months. He also questioned how he would deal with the economic and social consequences, saying the association would be blamed for everything. He pointed out that no one even knew if they would still be alive the following month. The director asked what he suggested they should do. Haesung replied that they should not reveal the true scale of the invasion, and that they should hide the possibility of an A-class monster. He said the citizens should blame themselves for not evacuating, not the association. If it were up to him, he would not have even called the meeting with the guilds or made any prior announcement. When Byung-hun questioned how he could say that without considering how many people might die, Haesung coldly stated that this was the convenient part. The more people died, the more necessary the guilds would become. From D-rank monsters onward, the regular army was useless, and he treated the general population as disposable pieces within that brutal scenario. He said the director was completely misunderstanding the situation, because he was not asking for anything. At that moment, Byung-hun was already regretting his decision and beginning to face the consequences of his own actions, realizing he had gotten involved with something far greater than he had imagined. Later, Sang-woon was calmly at home, training with his clones and telling them to work hard, noting that the rate of strength increase was growing far too slowly. Even so, he thought that ability was the best he could have, because he practically did not need to do anything while the clones evolved for him. Then he received a message from Jinmo and told number 1 that it was time to make money. When he met with the agent, he explained that he needed that guy to stay at the rabbit hunting ground for 1 more day. Jinmo asked where number 2 was, and Sang-woon replied that he was exercising. The agent commented that he should be doing the same, because he would get stronger in half the time. Sang-woon said he did not want to put in that much effort, and that it was better to let the clones handle it, since he did not even want to become a real hunter. He earned enough hunting those simple creatures. Jinmo said he was just suggesting it, since Sang-woon had great potential and was not using it properly, and that he could become a much better hunter. Sang-woon replied that his life was fine the way it was. That was when everything changed. Jinmo said that maybe that was why he had ended up like this, and suddenly Sang-woon's arm was cut off. He was thrown to the ground and began seeing images of his own family dead. His mother asked why he had become a hunter. His father said that was why he had abandoned them, and Jinmo begged him to save her. Soon after, he woke up in a hospital bed. Won-tae was by his side and asked if he was alright, saying it seemed to have been just a nightmare and that he should not move too much. Sang-moon asked if it was really Won-tae and if he had been the one who brought him there. He replied that he had, and that Sang-moon needed to be careful because his condition was terrible. The wound was deep, but he had been lucky. Sang-moon thanked him a lot, saying he had been saved twice, but Won-tae replied that it was nothing. He said there were many things he wanted to talk about, but that it was not the right time yet. Sang-moon's parents entered shortly after, extremely worried. Later, the doctor appeared and explained that the surgery had been a success. They would need to keep monitoring the boy for now, but he was recovering at an excellent rate and could return to normal life in about a month. Sang-woon asked how many days had passed and what had happened to the portal. The doctor replied that it had been 4 days and that most of the monsters had been eliminated, although some still remained. Sang-woon said he did not remember anything, but then began asking insistently about Ji-woon, wanting to know why no one was talking about her and whether she was alright. Later, he saw his sister. She was intubated, in a coma. The doctor explained that they had treated her abdominal area, but she had been infected by a mana-absorbing virus, something common in monsters that came through portals. It was a virus that continued to absorb and break down the host's mana. Most of the time, this did not cause major problems, because each person had different mana characteristics and the virus eventually died without being able to absorb enough. However, in very rare cases, when the host's mana matched the virus, it would absorb so much that the person could no longer live normally. Sang-woon asked if there was any cure. The doctor replied that with current medical technology, there was none. The virus synchronized with the host's mana, and not even healing magic could remove it. The only alternative was to keep supplying mana to keep her alive, with a minimal chance if they could get help from an S-class healer or a special blessing, along with rare items like mandrakes and elixirs from the other side of the portal, which were extremely rare and expensive. He began to think that if he had prioritized only his family instead of helping others, maybe none of that would have happened. He was so consumed by anger that his wound reopened. He thought he needed to become stronger, because if he had been more powerful, he would have been able to save everyone. He felt that he did not have enough ability, and that he should have worked harder. Later, already in the hospital room and recovering from the incident, Haeon came to visit him and asked if the professor was alright. He said that, thinking about it, he had decided to quit college. 2 weeks later, he had already escaped from the hospital. The doctor could not believe how fast he had recovered, and the nurse asked if all hunters were like that, but the doctor replied that as far as he knew, they were not. Sang-woon was already changing clothes to put on his usual outfit when he noticed the large scar on his shoulder, exactly where he had been struck by the creature. When he saw it, he remembered the conversation he had with Haeon and decided that he could not continue teaching her from that point on. He apologized for that, and Haehyun said it was fine, thanking him for everything he had done so far. She commented that now it was not like he would keep in touch with her, and even teased him, saying he might regret giving up such a beautiful student. She also said she would go to college, that she would probably get a boyfriend there, and that he should not go back on his words when that happened. Sang-woon thought he would not regret it, because he did not even have time for that kind of thing. thing. His mind was already somewhere else. He prepared himself and decided to fully commit to the life of a real hunter. He went straight to the Canis Guild office, and as soon as he arrived, told the receptionist that he was there to meet Captain Park Wante. He explained that he did not have an appointment, but that Wante himself had said he wanted to talk to him. The receptionist replied that she could only allow entry with a scheduled appointment. At that moment, a large man approached and asked if he was Mr. Sang-woon. He confirmed, and the man told the receptionist that he was a guest, and that he would guide him upstairs, because the captain was indeed waiting for him. The large man personally escorted Sang-woon to Wante's office, where he was welcomed. Wante said it was good to see him back, and that he was glad he had left the hospital safely. He commented that he had been discharged much earlier than expected. Sang-woon replied that everything had been thanks to his help, and that as soon as he was discharged, he came straight to thank him for everything he had done. Wante said he had only done what anyone would do, but Sang-woon insisted that it was not something simple, because he had saved his family and provided immediate medical care, as well as paying for private rooms and even a temporary place for his parents to stay. He said he felt incredibly grateful and that words were not enough, but he also wanted to understand why he had gone so far for them and whether that had anything to do with why he had called him there. Wante explained that he also had a sister, but that she was missing along with her team members. He said that perhaps he had seen his own path reflected in him and admitted that his personal feelings were involved, but made it clear that he had not done anything to leave him in debt or expecting something in return. Even so, Sang-woon still felt indebted and asked why he wanted to see him as soon as he got better. The captain replied that he was curious about his ability and asked directly if the clones were real bodies, including the one that had saved the civilian during the incident. Sang-woon said he did not plan to hide it, but was surprised that he already knew and confirmed that it was his ability. Then Wontae got straight to the point and said that he needed his strength. He asked for help to rescue the first team of the Canis Guild, in the same way he had saved other survivors without asking for anything in return. He made it clear that he was not asking as payment for the support he had given, but because he was the only one with a real chance of saving his sister and the other team members. Hearing that, Sang-woon remembered that it was Wante who had helped his own sister. He said that since his family had been saved, it was only fair to repay him, and asked him to explain what needed to be done. Later, he found himself in a large training space, and asked what that place was. Wante explained that it was the Canis training ground, an environment with reinforced interiors, where he could use as many abilities as he wanted without worrying about destruction. Sang-woon asked if they should not be going to rescue them immediately, but Wante said that first they needed to do something there. He explained that the faster they executed the plan, the higher their chances of success would be. Thanks to his sister's ability, Team 1 had a huge amount of supplies, so they still had at least 8 months left. The second problem was the dungeon's level. Even though they were the guild's elite team, with full combat capability of B class, they had suffered injuries and were unable to escape. Sang-woon replied that he understood, because if it had been dangerous for a team at that level, then for him, who was still a novice, it would be far more risky. Wante explained that yes, there was a way to get around that situation, and he made Sang-woon think about it by mentioning that humans can release an absurd amount of strength when they are on the verge of death. He explained that this momentary strength, awakened in extreme situations, is even capable of tearing muscles or breaking bones, and that this naturally reflects in their stats. What Sang-woon was lacking at that moment were precisely enough stats to keep up with the level of the situations he was facing. Until then, he had been overcoming everything with his battle sense, but during real missions, even that had its limits. And that was when Wante, already asking for forgiveness in advance, made it clear that there was no other path besides making him endure as much as possible, immediately rushing at him with a wooden sword and starting an extremely brutal training session. Meanwhile, Wante's group was quite worried about Sang-woon's condition, wondering if he was still in the hospital, until he finally appeared. The reaction was immediate. Everyone felt relieved and happy, but they soon noticed that his face was completely swollen, clearly injured. When questioned, he explained that a lot had happened and that he needed to talk calmly. When he told everything, Jinmo asked if his sister had been infected by the virus and if he himself was alright. Sang-woon answered that yes, he had been infected, but since the characteristic of his mana was different, he ended up being cured quickly. Right after that, Jinmo asked about the Canis Guild mission, and Sang-woon confirmed that he had received it and that he intended to repay it. Since Wante had saved his family, the group commented that they had found the lack of contact strange, and he explained that he had lost his phone, now using an extra device from one of his clones, even asking them to send messages to number 2, but making it clear that he would not back up his contacts. The conversation continued, and Jinmo questioned whether his friends would not find out about the situation, but Sang-woon said it was better this way. Soon after, the question about his injuries came up, and he explained that he had trained with Wante. The reaction was immediate, with Jinmo finding that absurd and saying he would file an official complaint with the guild, but Sang-woon made it clear that he had agreed to it. He explained that Wante's younger sister was trapped in a dungeon, and that he must be desperate, something he himself understood very well. Despite having been beaten that day, he was already planning to use his clones to attack as well. Jinmo, even worried, decided at least to provide healing potions for him. The next day, Sang-woon took number 1, and the two of them faced Wante together, but they came out completely exhausted. The following day, he took number 2, and the 3 of them were beaten again. After that, he took number 3, and the 4 of them ended up being defeated even worse. With each passing day, the beating got heavier, clearly showing the absurd difference in level between them and Wante. When he met Jinmo again, he was asked if he was okay, and he replied that the opponent was simply too strong. He acknowledged that his clones were excellent at copying movements, and that they were learning, but the power gap was still enormous. Even recovering with potions and trying to stay on his feet, he began to think of a way to reduce that gap. That was when he showed something to Jinmo, and asked if it would be possible to get it. Jinmo said he could get it, but questioned whether it was safe. Sangwoo simply told him not to worry. The next day, when he returned, Wante commented that it was good to see him working hard, but he was clearly surprised when he noticed that the 3 clones were completely different, transformed by the magical jewels. Number 3 in particular was behaving in an almost animalistic way, chewing a bear as if it were a dog. Sangwoo made it clear that that day everything would be different. When Jinmo arrived with the crystals, Sangwoo said that that amount was already enough, and that even Captain Wante would be surprised. And that was exactly what happened. Upon seeing the clones in that state, Wante questioned what had been done to them, and Sangwoo explained that he had made the clones consume 60 jewels, stating that since they were considered summoned creatures, they could absorb these items and transfer the stat gains to him. Wante was intrigued by that, wondering if it was really possible to use the jewels that way. Without wasting time, Sangwoo drew his cursed sword, making it clear that that day he would fight with everything he had. Wante, on the other hand, continued using only his wooden sword and stated that that would not be enough, even allowing him to come with killing intent. The clones really were faster and stronger, and Wante himself noticed that their abilities, previously inferior to the original body, were now practically at the same level, probably due to the effect of the jewels. Even so, with a single precise attack, he managed to take down number 3, explaining that despite the increase in strength caused by the monstrous transformation, the clone's precision had dropped drastically due to the excess of jewels. At that moment, the original Sangwoo advanced, stating that at least he had not turned into a monster. His attack was a well-executed feint, creating a perfect opening, and he fired his pistol directly at Wante's head. However, the shot caused absolutely no damage. Wante acknowledged that it had been a good attack, but made it clear that without the use of a mana bullet, it would be impossible to hurt him. Right after that, Wante countered with a heavy blow to Sangwoo's stomach, knocking the air out of his lungs instantly. Even so, the clones continued advancing like uncontrolled beasts, attacking with brute force, but with no precision at all. Despite the absurd power they had gained, they could not land decisive blows. That was when Wante explained that he needed to pour mana into his arms and into the sword, as if it were a natural extension of his own body. When he applied the technique, his strike simply destroyed the clones' knives, as if they were fragile toys. He even stated that if he truly mastered that, he would be able to cut monsters even with tree branches. Sangwoo could only think that in that place, the real monster was Wante himself, because his wooden sword looked like pure steel in his hands. Even so, Sangwoo got up even rougher than before and rushed forward again. The next attack made Wante admit that he had really become stronger, especially considering that he could increase his stats using magical jewels. But that still was not enough. The captain dodged all the attacks and landed a precise strike on each of them, making it clear that at that level, Sangwoo still could not be considered a true rank C. He himself acknowledged that was not yet the case, but guaranteed that soon it would be different, because he had no intention of stopping at that level. Determined to move forward, he decided to motivate the clones in a somewhat insane way, pointing at the captain's face, and saying that his sharp nose and square jaw looked like a rare jewel, practically encouraging the clones to see Wante as a walking jewel to devour. The clones advanced together with the original Sangwoo, and while fighting, he realized that his desire to become stronger did not come only from Wante's request. When he woke up in the hospital, he felt something far worse than physical pain. He felt powerless. He felt that he had not been able to protect his own family during the disaster. The hatred for his weak body grew there, and the worst part was knowing that no one in that disaster had any idea that everything had started because of Haesung, precisely the man who later destroyed the Megalosaurus with his meteor rain. Sangwoo no longer wanted to feel that despair, that sensation of being unable to do anything. He decided that no matter his current ability, he would push himself until he surpassed all limits. 6 months later, at the Sinsoldong Station hunting field, a group was causing trouble. A large hunter from the Silvermoon Guild was intimidating a weaker group, knocking one of them to the ground. The young man's friend questioned why they were doing that, since everyone had permission to enter the field. The big guy replied that the Silvermoon Guild was using that field now, and that if they wanted to hunt, they should go somewhere else. The soldiers present pretended not to see anything, as if the situation simply did not exist. The big man even provoked the woman, saying that if she stayed quiet, he might let her use the field. Her friends, outraged, called those guys trash. At that moment, a hooded figure approached casually. A soldier tried to drive him away, telling him to leave because he was not seeing the situation. The hooded figure calmly asked why, since he had paid for entry. The big man approached to intimidate him, and started saying that the field belonged to Silvermoon, calling him an idiot. When he tried to throw a punch, he received a direct blow to the stomach in return. The other group was shocked. The hooded figure asked why he had done that, saying that he did not want to counterattack, that it had only been an automatic defense. He even mocked the so-called Silver Moon Guild, questioning what his entry had to do with that shitty guild. Then it became clear that the hooded figure was Sang-woon himself. With another precise strike, he knocked the big man out. The Silver Moon members, furious, advanced, saying that everyone there were Class D hunters, and that he would not escape. They believed he would not be able to handle all of them alone. Sang-woon simply asked if they really thought he was alone. Right after that, his troop appeared. Meanwhile, Jinmo was in a meeting with Captain Park Wante, who apologized for bothering him at that time. Jinmo told him not to worry, that he himself should have mentioned it earlier. Wante explained that he had come to get what he had requested. Jinmo then picked up a document warning that since it was personal information, he could not take a photo and would have to return it later. Wante agreed, saying he only needed to check it quickly. The document was the record of Sang-woon's last test. After analyzing it, Wante asked if his stats had really increased that much. Jinmo confirmed, saying that recently he seemed like a completely different man, that after the incident, he had become almost obsessed with hunting and training. Then he asked if those stats were already enough for the captain's plan. Wante replied that there was no need to even mention that, because in fact he had another plan in mind. That was only a safety measure in case they failed and needed to execute him in time. But Wante did not seem truly worried. Sang-woon's growth had been monstrous. At that moment he had 19,000 strength, 17,000 agility, 16,000 vitality, 17,000 dexterity, 31,000 mana, 1,000 in projectile, and 18,000 regeneration, in addition to several other special attributes and abilities accumulated over the months. Wante commented that they could already begin the rescue commission for Team 1, and thought that the kid was already close to rank C level. With time he could become a high rank. The cloning ability in particular made the user stronger than the stats seemed to show, so it was impossible to measure exactly how powerful he had become. Meanwhile, at the other hunting field, the soldiers and those present were getting a practical demonstration of that power, because Sang-woon's clones had simply beaten the Silver Moon Guild members without any difficulty. A soldier tried to intervene, saying that it was already too much, and that he could not act like that. Sang-woon replied that the soldier should have said that earlier, when the other group was being beaten, not now. He said he would not blame him, but that he could keep guarding the entrance, and pretending nothing had happened. Right after that, he ordered the clones to break the phones of the people they had just beaten, and calmly walked into the hunting field. The intimidated group decided to abandon that field, and look for another place. Inside the Sinsul Dong station, the field was dominated by undead creatures. Among those risking their lives there to collect cheap items, was the very man who had caused trouble with Sang-woon in the previous field. Upon seeing someone entering, he complained about the inspection, but when he recognized Sang-woon's face, he commented that it had been a while. Ajusi asked what he was doing there, and how he had managed to get in, since the Silver Moon members were supposed to be guarding the entrance. Sang-woon replied that that was exactly what he wanted to know, questioning what a weakling was doing in a Class D dungeon. Irritated, Ajusi could barely respond. Sang-woon observed that by his appearance, he was not there to hunt, and implied that he and his friend had been trapped inside by Silver Moon. He said he did not feel sorry but wanted to understand what had happened, showing a photo of the guild members in their underwear after the beating they had taken. He assured that the gate had already been taken care of, and told Ajusi to explain the situation. After some time, with all the monsters defeated, Ajusi explained that Class D monsters sometimes dropped jewels when they died, but not always. The jewels remained on the bodies for a long time, and inside a dungeon it was common for monsters to fight each other, drop jewels, start new fights, and accumulate even more. People like him came there only to collect those jewels. When Sang-woon asked why so many people were being forced to do that, Ajusi explained that they were either people in debt to the guild, or had been sold as slaves. It was an extremely dangerous job, but if someone died there, they would simply be treated as just another hunter dead in a dungeon. Sang-woon had never imagined witnessing something like that in real life. Even without showing much, he told Ajusi to leave before he changed his mind. The man became emotional, but Sang-woon told him to leave the jewels behind, and stop the drama. After he left, Sang-woon gathered all the accumulated jewels and ordered number 1 to devour them. He admitted to himself that that collection method was not as difficult as it seemed, and decided that he would take advantage of the situation. However, in the depths of the field, someone was running desperately from a Class C abomination, a grotesque undead with several arms and 2 heads. The one fleeing was Kim Uhyun, a worker from the Silver Moon Guild, who had been left behind. With no chance of winning, he stumbled, fell, and practically accepted death. Before the final blow could hit him, Sang-woon pulled him back, dodging the creature's attack. Kim Uhyun asked who he was, and Sang-woon replied directly that he was his savior, taking the chance to ask if he still had any jewels. The man said he had already dropped everything. Sang-woon lamented the waste and asked if the one who had brought him there was the Hoysung Guild. While they talked, the abomination kept attacking. Number 1, transformed into a gigantic demon, crashed into the creature, holding it in combat. Even so, Sang-woon drew Kim Uhyun's attention, asking why he was more worried about the fight than answering, and demanded that he explain what the connection with the Hoysung Guild was. When Sang-woon told him to answer, Kim Uhyun stared at him, trying to understand who the hell that guy was, who acted as if he were on a casual walk in the park. His first reaction was to try to run, but Sang-woon grabbed his arm before he could take 2 steps. Kim asked how he could act like that with monsters around, as if nothing was happening. Sang-woon replied not to worry about them, as if that were the least of his problems. At that moment, numbers 2 and 3 appeared and started eliminating the other enemies around them. Kim became even more confused, wondering if that was an organized team or if he was some kind of summoner. Sang-woon replied that everything was completely safe. Exactly at the moment, an explosion echoed behind him. When number 1 was knocked down by the abomination, he widened his eyes and asked if number 1 was really losing, even after consuming so many jewels. That made no sense, so he decided he needed to finish that quickly. He told Kim to wait there for a bit and said he had fed that clone too much to let it fall like that. He took a deep breath, focused for real, and drew the cursed sword. He advanced toward the abomination and cut off the arm that held the bone sword. Then he struck fast, faster, even faster, pressuring the creature without giving it space. When he prepared the next thrust, the image of the creature that had injured his sister passed through his mind, but he did not let himself be consumed by anger. He calmed himself in the middle of the battle. Before the abomination could counterattack, numbers 2 and 3 stepped in front of him, protecting him so he could concentrate. He infused the blade with mana, and with a clean and heavy slash, split the abomination in half. When the body hit the ground heavy and rotten, Sang-woon muttered that that sword was annoying as hell. Kim, still in disbelief, asked if he had really defeated the abomination. Sang-woon shot back, asking why he had not run away. Kim replied that he had told him to wait. That was when Sang-woon noticed that number 1 was not doing well. The cut on his shoulder was not regenerating as it should. Kim explained that the abomination's bone sword had a corrosive curse, and that without a healer, the clone could die. Sang-woon complained that he was only saying that now and thought it would have been a disaster if that blow had hit him. He also realized that when the clones consumed jewels, they became even more reckless, focusing only on attacking and forgetting to dodge. Kim asked if that guy was even human. Sang-woon replied that he was a summoner. Then Kim pulled out a suspicious flask, with 2 skull icons on the label, and said that if the clone drank a bit of that, it could live longer, but he would not take responsibility. The liquid did not look like anything good, but there was not much choice. Sang-woon poured it into number 1's mouth. A putrid smoke rose from the wound, and shortly after, he was completely healed. Number 1 stood up, apparently fine. Sang-woon celebrated, but Kim warned that it was only temporary. The side effect was the complete exhaustion of life force. His ability was poison, and he could create a regeneration potion that saved someone in that moment, but led to death later. Sang-woon asked if that meant the clone would eventually die. After hearing the confirmation, he simply told number 1 to go back to hunting. If it was going to die, it would die soon anyway, and afterward he could just resummon another one without any problem. Kim was shocked by the coldness and said that he had already revealed his own ability, so now he wanted to know who he was. He described that guy as someone who had monsters like they were pets, all absurdly strong, and who had defeated the abomination almost alone. How had no one heard of him? Number 1 answered that it was because he was Class E. Kim did not believe it, asking how a Class E was inside a Class D dungeon and hunting so easily. Sang-woon told him to relax and stop acting like they were friends. He said that now it was his turn to ask questions. Meanwhile, at the Yahello Guild warehouse, Miho asked if that was already enough. The manager Seon-ah questioned why she had suddenly started collecting so many jewels, since she had not been like that before. Miho explained that it was a favor for Mr. Wong Tai. Seon-ah asked why he needed so many jewels, and Miho replied that it was for a guy named Sang-woon, something like that, and that she had heard he was using those jewels for something specific. Back in the dungeon, when Sang-woon looked at Kim again, he realized that he seemed a bit offended. He thought he should not create unnecessary hostility there, and said that he could speak more comfortably if he wanted. Kim relaxed a little and asked if he really could. Then Sang-woon got straight to the point and asked why he had mentioned the Hisung Guild while running away. Kim asked if he was really a hunter and did not know about that. Sang-woon replied that he had gotten his license recently and did not know much about guild politics. Then Kim explained that Silvermoon was basically a lackey of the Hisung Guild, pretending to be independent while doing the dirty work. Many of the people forced to work there had been paid or manipulated by Hisung. When Sang-woon asked if he had also been taken by them, Kim froze for a moment, remembering his own past, and replied that he did not need to know that. Deep down, he thought he must have gone crazy to reveal even his ability to that guy, and that if he was not careful, he could end up losing his own cover. Sang-woon said he had already gotten the information he wanted, and that he was leaving. Kim asked if he was not going to get out of there since it seemed like he was going even deeper into the hunting field. He replied that he had just gotten started, and that if he wanted, he could leave. Kim said that was fine, and thanked him, but before leaving, Sang-woon commented that his ability was very good. Kim asked if that was some kind of joke, if drinking that did not kill. He replied that he did not care about side effects. Then he handed over a very dirty card and said that if he was not afraid and wanted revenge against Haesung, he could contact him. After that, he told number 5 to escort Kim to the entrance. Later, Sang-woon continued facing those abominable creatures and thought that that guy's ability could be very useful for his clones. Number 1 was still standing, but after defeating a few more creatures, he simply collapsed dead. Sang-woon thought he would last longer, but that was not the case. Even so, he did not worry much. He just resummoned him and told him to put on his clothes because they were going hunting again. When Sang-woon and his clones passed through a nearby area, the Silvermoon group he had beaten earlier was hiding in an alley. One of them commented that the guy had already left. The bald one asked what that had been, saying that man was a monster. Another replied that he was sure the monster had died, but that he had come back to life. At least they believed they had not been seen. The two of them then accessed a secret passage located in that hunting field. The place led to a drug laboratory, more specifically one that produced refined jewel crystals. The bald one explained that the capacity of those jewels was 100 times better than normal ones, and that just one of them increased stats by 0.5, but the side effects were much heavier. That was why the World Association had restricted sales. His companion asked what the point was, since the side effects did not make it worth it. The bald one agreed, saying that almost no one would be willing to take that risk, which was why the product was cheap. But the situation had changed. They had discovered that there was a place where the jewels were processed again, to create a product that could be used on people. It was a project called DEP, and the company Tron was buying jewels desperately. Since it was illegal, the price had skyrocketed. No one would have imagined that that trash would turn into money. Even after getting beaten up, no one could take that from them. After that, they returned to the hunting field and closed the secret passage. Later, Kim passed by because she knew where it was. She thought it had been easy to shake those bastards off. She had told number 5 that she would go to the entrance later, and he got nervous for not completing the task. Kim thought it had been the right decision to stay in that hunting field. Thanks to Silvermoon, she gained access to the refined jewel storage. She put everything in a bag, hid it in her pants, and left along with the victims of the hunting field. Number 5 felt tense, but when he saw that she left safely, he considered the mission complete. Kim felt like she had pulled it off. To hell with Silvermoon and Hisung. Meanwhile, Sangwon realized that everyone had escaped safely, and that he had already dealt with the monsters. He collected several jewels, and finally understood why they had been out of stock in stores in recent days. Now he had obtained a good amount. Number 1 asked if he should eat all of them, but the original said no. If he turned into a monster now, people would start to fear him. They decided to try the next day. At that moment, Sangwon received a message from Wante, saying it was time to explain the mission. The next day, the Silvermoon group returned to check on the drugs, but they were no longer there. The big bald man grabbed a soldier by the neck and demanded to know what had happened. He said they were paid to guard the place. The soldier replied that the agreement was only to let them enter. They had never been paid to guard anyone. The people who left were the same ones they had locked inside. The big man began to suspect that it was that bastard and his group who had taken the drugs, but he knew he would never be able to recover anything from those monsters because they were too strong. Meanwhile, Kim did not expect to be placed in a dungeon meant for C-class hunters. She would have died if it were not for that strange guy. At least she had managed to get those jewels. She knew Silvermoon would suspect her if she tried to sell everything now, so she decided to hide them for the time being. When she saw the JM agency card, she remembered what Sang-Woong had said. Even so, she decided that he did not know anything. Meanwhile, at Odin Tower, an S-class dungeon that had never been fully explored, it was only known that the strongest hunter of the first generation, Baek Hwan, had found that place and tried to challenge it. He entered, but lost contact and never returned. After that, countless hunters tried the same thing, but all failed without even passing the lower levels. The only one who achieved something different was George Lucas, known as Jumper. At the meeting, Wante explained that this was exactly where Team 1 was trapped, along with his own sister. Sang Wong asked what exactly it meant that they were trapped. Wante explained that Odin Tower was a dungeon with a special structure. It had an entrance, but it had no exit. The only connection to the outside world was through mana. The only possible way to communicate was using telepathy magic. Because of that, the ways to escape were extremely limited. Either the dungeon was completed, or someone managed to escape using a teleportation ability. That was why Sang Wong's cloning was so important. If something went wrong, other hunters would have no way to escape. Sang Wong then asked if Team 1 could not simply leave using their own strength. Wong Tae explained that they had even received a method of exit. The question was why they had still not escaped. Then he began to explain what really happened in Odin Tower, and how everything went wrong. 5 years after the great disaster of 2005, his sister had already awakened her abilities during that so-called Dark Age, shortly after the end of the disaster. At that time, Wante was 16 years old, and his sister Park Yuna was only 9. He always told her not to go outside because she could get hurt. She would reply that she was not hurt. Park Yuna's ability was similar to subspace storage. She could store various things inside her own space. It was an extremely useful ability. When they were young, they went through many dangerous situations using it. They could hide inside the subspace, store items, even creatures. That was how they grew up, surviving in a destroyed world full of threats. Over time, the two of them became members of the Keenest Guild. As an adult, Park Yuna became the leader of Team 1. When the proposal to go to Odin Tower came up, Wante said he did not think it was a good idea. He believed they needed at least one teleportation user in the group. Park Yuna replied that they always came back to that topic and asked why they had bought a teleportation scroll. Then, there were fewer than 100 natural teleportation users in the entire world, and they had not been able to recruit any. If they did not go at that moment, they might never go. The condition of Team 1 was the best it had ever been, and on top of that, they had her ability. She also questioned whether he did not trust her for that mission. Team 1 wanted to leave, but Wante was still unsure. Even so, Park Yuna promised that they would return immediately if the situation became dangerous. She knew how horrible it was to leave family behind without coming back. In addition to the teleportation scroll, she had already stored large amounts of food, medical kits, and other emergency supplies. In the present, Wante confessed that he deeply regretted it. He should not have been convinced by her words. He should not have been reassured because of the supplies. He should have stopped Team 1 from leaving, but they went anyway. His partner commented that he really thought they would not go. They had been preparing for years, and he was being too overprotective. Wante admitted that she was right. Since they had already left, he decided to trust them. It was on that very same day when Team 1 entered Odin Tower that he went to the Awakening program, where Sang-woon also awakened. Sang-woon commented that he had been there at the time as well, and that seemed like an absurd coincidence. Junmo asked if they had not tried to contact Team 1 recently. Wontae explained that they had taken 10 telepathy scrolls and had committed to sending weekly reports. Since there was no other way to connect outside the dungeon's mana, a guild team stayed positioned at the entrance of Odin Tower to receive the messages. The first report came without problems, the second and third as well, and everything seemed to be going fine. However, after a month, something went wrong. At the entrance of Odin Tower, inside the temporary tent set up by the guild, everyone was prepared to receive the next report. At the entrance of Odin Tower, inside the guild tent, Wontae asked if they should have already reached the 40-kilometer mark at that pace. The team confirmed that yes, so they prepared the telepathy scroll to receive the weekly report. As soon as they activated the connection, the communicator made contact, saying they had an urgent report. The message began to be transmitted through telepathy. They had advanced about 700 meters after passing the last part of the first floor. Then they reported that they had been ambushed by an unknown monster. Most of the team members were fighting the creature at that exact moment. There were injured members, the communication started to become unstable, and suddenly the communicator began to hear screams through the mental connection. The transmission turned chaotic. The pain and despair crossed the telepathic link so intensely that the communicator himself almost lost his sanity, trying to maintain contact. Realizing what was happening, Wontae slowly turned around, already expecting the worst possible outcome. The atmosphere in the tent grew heavy. No one said anything. Then they decided to use the teleportation scroll that was linked to Team 1. The activation was immediate. A mana circle formed on the ground of the tent, and in the next instant, someone emerged from the portal. But whoever appeared was not alive. It was one of the members of Team 1, already dead. The body fell in front of them, and in that moment, the weight of Wontae's responsibility as guild leader collapsed right before his eyes. Songtae, one of the members of Team 1, collapsed into Wontae's arms as the situation became increasingly chaotic. They questioned who had ordered the entire team to be brought there, and demanded that the situation be resolved immediately. But the portal was still open, and another team member had to interrupt the process. She asked if the communicator was working, and if the telepathy was still connected. They confirmed that it was better now. Then she informed them that a rescue team would be sent immediately, and that they only needed to check outside at 2 in the afternoon, and remain inside the subdimension. Even while coughing up blood, Songtae apologized. They had failed. The monsters had torn all the scrolls into pieces, and nothing about that creature was in the report. The healer, even while doing everything possible, said he needed to be taken to the hospital because he was bleeding heavily. When they took him away, Wontae was completely devastated. Shortly after, the communicator alerted them that there was something they needed to hear. Since the telepathy was still active, they simply repeated the transmitted words. Wontae's sister reported that the battle had ended and apologized for failing the mission. She said she thought they would succeed, that they could wait, and that there was no need to rush things. She assured that they would return alive no matter what happened. In the present, Wontae said those were their last words. After that, they tried to hire several hunters to enter the place, but no one accepted. Most said it was practically suicide to go in there. No one wanted to take the job, and everyone already knew what happened when there was a portal break. Sang-woon commented that it was during that break that he met him, and that because of that, he wanted him to have the necessary stats, because he needed to have the ability to at least reach as far as they did. Wontae confirmed, and said he had done everything he could in the best way possible. Now all that remained was to carry out the rescue mission. Their guild Canis would escort him to the entrance of Odin's tower, and they would depart the next day. Meanwhile, in a luxury hotel, one of the rooms was noisy because the members of Silvermoon were being beaten. The guild leader, Yang Gukil, asked if he had ever told them to hunt something impossible. He had only sent a D-class hunter to guard the entrance, but the item ended up being stolen. Irritated, he asked who was responsible. One of the men explained that most of them were wearing masks, and that only one of them was not, but he was not on the list of hunters, nor above D-class. Yang Gukil became furious upon learning they had been defeated by someone of E-class, and kicked the member, saying they were not the only ones who produced jewel crystals. He made it clear that if they did not recover the amount intended for Hisung, there would be no patience. If they were replaced by other suppliers, everything would be over. He ordered them to bring that man to him, and did not want to hear another word. After dismissing the group, he thought they would probably get beaten again, and called them all useless. He also commented that he thought Hisung should take action as well. The response was that it would be easy to find the person responsible by pressuring a few people, and thus Kang Kyun-sung, vice leader of the Silvermoon Guild, was introduced. The next day, at the JM agency, Junmo asked if Sang-woo thought there was something strange about that job. Sang-woo said he did not believe he was lying, but felt that something important was being omitted. At no point was the reason for trying to clear Odin's tower explained. He commented that he might not understand everything about the hunter industry, but he knew that place. The tower had been conquered in 2012, and according to Jumper, it was announced on national television that Odin's tower was empty. There was only one monster left. There was no treasure or items, and it was recommended that no one enter so as not to sacrifice their life uselessly. After that, players stopped going there, and the place ended up becoming an abandoned dungeon. Even so, Wontae did not explain why they wanted to complete it. Junmo acknowledged that it was strange, and asked if he should investigate further, but Sang-woo said it was not necessary. The objective was to rescue the people, not to clear the dungeon. On the way, they found Yu Hyon, who was sleeping on the ground. Sang-woo explained that he had met her in a hunting field, and suggested that she come there if she did not have anywhere to work. When she woke up, she found Junmo very close to her and got startled, creating an awkward atmosphere. After that, he suggested that she eat something first. They went to the restaurant in front of the agency, and she ate a lot because she was very hungry. Meanwhile, Sang-woo took her phone to register his own number and asked if she had really gone there to work or just to talk to him. She replied that she was there to work. Junmo then asked what exactly her ability was. Uryeon explained that she could evaluate items and potions. Sang-woo joked that her potions killed whoever drank them, but she pulled his hair and said that she also knew how to make potions that did not kill. He replied that, even with the risks, the potions still had great effects, and that he wanted to use Leon's abilities. Junmo stepped closer and asked if he intended to test them on the clones, and he confirmed that he did. He told them to arrange some equipment for potion production, and said he would also provide funds to help. After that, he told Leon to continue her meal calmly, because he was already on his way out. She asked where he was going, if it was to a dungeon, and he answered yes, but that this time the objective was not to hunt. Before he left, Uhyun threw 2 potions to him, one that temporarily increased strength, and another to restore mana. Sang-woo commented that the colors were very intuitive, but she explained that the side effects were severe, because the strength potion melted the muscles and the mana potion could make the body explode. Even so, he thanked her, finding the situation somewhat exciting. Then he summoned all his clones and left, promising them that when they returned, he would buy real food. Later, Seon-ah, Miho's partner, went to check the jewel stock and said she would get in touch when she finished. As she approached the entrance of the Yahello warehouse, she found the guards dead and a huge hole in the wall. Indignant, she asked who would dare to steal from that place, and activated her invader ability, which worked like a radar to detect enemies. However, before she could react, she was attacked from behind. Without understanding how she had not detected anyone outside, she was struck on the head and fell unconscious. The intruder mocked her, asking if she really thought he would reveal himself so easily, apologized sarcastically, and said they needed the jewels. Meanwhile, the Silver Moon members were carrying everything out. After that, he poured a barrel of gasoline and set the warehouse on fire. Now it was time to find out who had stolen the crystals, and for whom those jewels were intended. In Iceland, Sang-woo was already arriving at the Canis Guild aircraft, accompanied by his clones. He stood before the Valhalla portal, which would take him to Odin's tower, where the guard informed him that Mr. Park Wante was waiting for him at the entrance. Just by approaching that place, he felt an overwhelming pressure of power. As he crossed the portal, he appeared under an aurora borealis, in a cold, isolated land surrounded by a bottomless cliff that seemed to merge with deep space. He commented that it definitely did not look like a tower, and complained about the cold, saying he needed to go quickly to the guild headquarters. Meanwhile, Wante received the news about the jewel theft and wondered who would have the courage to do something like that without knowing what kind of person Miho was. When Sang-woo appeared, the atmosphere changed completely. Everyone became very excited and even worried about him, saying they had prepared a fur coat because the cold there was intense. Not only did he put on the coat, but all the clones did as well. Analyzing the map, Wante explained that the place where Team 1 disappeared was 40 kilometers away. Sang-woo replied that it was not as far as he had imagined. Wante continued, saying they had not had problems with supplies, so they advanced without delay. He had 3 teleportation scrolls prepared for emergencies, and each clone could carry one, because that was essential for the plan and to maintain safety. Clones number 4, 5, and 6 took the scrolls. Sang-woo asked how they worked, and Wante explained that they just had to tear them, since the destination was already set. The vice leader commented that they had instructed Team 1 to check outside at 2 in the afternoon, and that there would certainly be traces of battle, so the location would be easily identified. Before leaving, Sang-woo asked Wante what they would eat to celebrate when she returned, and he replied that it would definitely be homemade food. With that, the operation began. The clones advanced into Odin's tower, while the original Sang-woo remained at the camp, sitting in a chair and activating the familiar ability to connect with them. Wante thought that now everything was in his hands. He connected to clone number 1 and immediately felt the snowstorm. The familiar ability worked perfectly, and he realized that even with high resistance to the cold, walking there was difficult. Suddenly, the clone found himself in front of a cliff, and the view from above was impressive. There was Odin's tower. Then Sang-woo noticed something strange. He was not just sharing the senses of clone number 1, he had full control over him, since his familiar ability was already at level 17. Now he not only felt, but also controlled. It was like commanding a character in a game, but this time it was real. He was truly moving the body. Thus, he ordered the official start of the mission, the rescue of Team 1. When they reached a massive wall of ice, it became clear why it was impossible to escape that place. He opened the guide to analyze the initial monsters of the tower, and one of the first to appear was an ice bat, which lunged at them. However, clone number 2 eliminated it with ease. Sang-woo explained that ice bats were E-class monsters that always moved in groups, and that there was usually a boss among them. That boss was the large D-class ice bat. He raised his sword using the body of clone number 1 to face it, but before he could do anything, the other clones simply wiped out the creature. He was even a bit frustrated because he did not get the chance to fight properly, but he moved on. Even after eliminating several bats, they kept appearing without stopping. They had already advanced about 13 kilometers, which he estimated estimated as roughly 30% of the way. According to the instructions, new monsters should appear soon, so he warned the clones to be careful. It did not take long for snow creatures to appear, but they could not even attack. Sang-woo and his clones used magical projectiles and landed direct hits to the head, eliminating the enemies quickly. Other creatures charged like a herd, but they were also defeated easily. The real problem appeared when the ground cracked beneath their feet. Meanwhile, inside the Keenest Guild tent, Yuna wondered if he would be okay. Team 1 was the best strike team in the guild, and even they had struggled there. Wontae told her not to worry. He explained that at first he had planned a secret infiltration operation to avoid direct confrontations with monsters. The minimum recommended level for this mission was rank C. However, Sang-woo's growth exceeded expectations. In just 6 months, he had increased almost all his stats by around 20 points, which likely already placed him at the level of a rank B. In addition, his clones also grew stronger. Although the clones' stats were slightly lower than his, their movements were superior. In practice, it was as if Sang-woo were commanding an entire team of rank B hunters. Yuna commented that the average rank of Team 1 was rank B, and asked if he was saying that Sang-woo alone was equivalent to the entire team. Wontae replied that yes, that was how he saw it. He also commented that if the Yahello Guild warehouse had not been invaded, Sang-woo could have evolved even further with the prepared jewels. Yuna then questioned whether besides the ice golem mentioned in the report, there were not other monsters capable of stopping him. Wontae stated that he had already warned him about the golem, and that he would probably be able to avoid it. It was practically impossible not to notice such a massive creature. At that exact moment, Sang-woo was standing before the ice golem, a colossal one-eyed creature ready to crush him. Realizing the danger, he tried to use the sword's curse, but the bloody strike caused no damage at all. This only made the golem more furious, and it tried to smash him with even more force. He barely managed to dodge and realized that if he could not cut the creature, there was no way to deal damage with that sword. More yetis appeared and charged both at him and at the golem itself, but the creature simply grabbed and devoured them. It seemed to grow stronger by doing so. Its attacks devastated the battlefield, breaking the ice around them. Sang-woo remembered that Wontae had said the golem's weakness was its core. He searched for it, and after observing more carefully, saw a huge frozen crystal in the center of the creature's chest. The problem was figuring out how to destroy it. His magical projectiles did not even scratch it, so he began to come up with a plan. At that moment, the golem slammed the ground with force, making everything shake. He ordered the clones to move out of the creature's range. The tremor caused a landslide, and several rocks were hurled towards Sang-woo, but he managed to dodge. The problem was the next strike, which hit clone number 5 directly. The clone was crushed and killed instantly. Sang-woo was in shock, especially because it was number 5 who was carrying a teleportation scroll. Without hesitating, he ran toward the body that was about to be devoured by the golem. He channeled all his mana into his legs and jumped as high as he could to try to recover the scroll. At the last second, the creature's jaws closed, and clone number 5 was swallowed. As he rolled on the ground, Sang-woo provoked the monster while showing the scroll he had managed to grab. Right after that, he activated the spell directly on the golem's core. The idea was simple. If he could not break the ice, he would teleport the core away. A huge portal opened and swallowed only the crystal in the creature's chest. Without the core, the golem collapsed without strength, like a robot without a battery. In Wontae's tent, a massive block of ice crashed onto the roof at that exact moment, a consequence of the teleportation. After defeating the creature, several of Sang-woo's attributes increased, and his clone ability leveled up. Now he could summon 7 clones. He celebrated, because unlike his other abilities, he had never found a direct way to evolve the clone ability. From what it seemed, the only way was by defeating powerful creatures. Even with the evolution of the ability, Sang-woo decided that he would not summon more clones for now, so they continued forward, passing by the enormous body of the defeated golem. Meanwhile, the hunter and hero Jumper, at his home, received a message with a list of people who had requested to meet him that month. None of the names were from South Korea, which left him completely uninterested. He found it absurd, and told his secretary to reject all the requests, as well as to continue the preparations for the Academy's inauguration ceremony. Elsewhere, Ajusi was still alive, preparing instant noodles when his big friend asked if he had also been caught by Silvermoon. Ajusi said yes, but believed that he had actually been handed over by Haesung for causing trouble. The friend asked how he managed to escape those bastards, and Ajusi said he received help. The big guy commented that then things were fine, at least for now, and mentioned that Changwon had also been quite busy lately. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. When the big guy went to answer, he was immediately struck by one of the Silvermoon men, who broke the entrance open. Chonchung entered asking if Ajusi was there. He said he did not want to waste time, and asked who was responsible for attacking the guild's hunting ground. He informed them that this was already the 3rd person they were interrogating, while showing his hands with a bloodied knuckle duster. He commented that the previous 2 said they knew nothing. The big guy still tried to counterattack, but Cheon-song caught the blow easily. He asked if he liked showing strength, because he was strong too. He broke the big guy's hand and threw him away with a punch, saying he hated arrogant people. Ajusi, desperate, said he would tell everything, and begged him to stop, but Cheon-song ignored him and knocked him down with a slap. He said he would end up going with them anyway, and asked why he spoke as if he were being generous. He made it clear that his friend would die for being arrogant. After a sequence of punches, the big guy fell defeated. Ajusi, in panic, admitted that he knew who was responsible, and begged for mercy. Cheon-song commented to the Silvermoon men that apparently they always got something useful when they pressured weak people. Meanwhile, Sang-woo and his clone clones continued advancing. Soon they came across a field full of completely decomposed bodies, with only skeletons and scattered clothes remaining. He understood why the bodies had been left there, since it would be almost impossible to recover them in that environment. But he wondered what or who had done that. One of the clones reported that they were close to the destination. Sang-woo then ordered that, from that point on, they should look for any trace of battle from the strike team, as they would likely be hiding in the subdimension near the place where the confrontation happened. He asked how much time was left until 2 in the afternoon, but when he turned around he saw clone number 2 apparently attacking him with a knife. In reality, it was not aimed at him. The clone was protecting the original from an ice spike launched by a creature behind him. The creature looked like a smaller version of the ice golem, and right after attacking, it became partially translucent, as if it were using an invisibility ability. It was not just one, several of them appeared, forming something like an army of ice assassins. Sang-woo realized that this explained the corpses scattered across the field. Maybe it was because of these creatures that the strike team could not return. They had failed to detect the enemies beforehand, and ended up falling into the trap. Clone number 2 pulled the spike out of his hand and counterattacked. Sang-woo took advantage of the opening, and eliminated the enemy that had ambushed them. He ordered them to press forward on that side, but the enemies reacted quickly and disappeared again. Even so, he was surprised to notice that his clones were blocking all the attacks from the invisible creatures. He wondered how they were doing that. Realizing that the clones were handling the situation naturally, he let number 1 take control, while he simply observed. Clone number 1 drew the cursed sword, blocked an attack from a creature even while it was invisible, and then counterattacked from behind, taking the enemy down. That was when Sang-woo understood the strategy. The creatures only masked their appearance, not their sounds. The clones were reacting to the sound of the wind and the subtle shifts in the air. Even so, he knew he still had a long way to go before he could copy that refined perception ability. Meanwhile, inside the subdimension where Yuna was, the group commented that it would soon be 2 in the afternoon and that they should check the situation. Some stood up in agreement. Yuna wondered if there would really be a rescue team that day. She could no longer bring herself to encourage hope in the others, because she believed everything would be the same as the previous days, only the silent ice field waiting for them outside. At the moment she began to open the subspace, sounds of combat echoed from outside. At the same time, Sang-woo was also focusing all his attention on hearing, but with a different objective. He was trying to accurately detect the enemy's movements, just like his clones did, determined to master that technique. Sang-woo was starting to get the hang of fighting by listening to the enemy's movements, but it was still not enough. He did not have super speed or any automatic defense ability. The ice assassins were only truly dangerous when they became invisible, because aside from that they were weak. Clone number 1 dodged the attacks carefully, but the real problem was the quantity. It was not just 1 or 2 enemies, it was practically an entire army. The clones began to be hit by the rapid strikes of the assassins. The situation was becoming worrying, because the enemies kept appearing without stopping. Sang-woo could not even estimate whether there were hundreds or thousands. Then, suddenly, a portal opened above him. He immediately recognized it as the strike team's subspace. He took control of clone number 1's body, and ordered everyone to run toward the portal. Inside the subdimension, Yuna said there was someone outside. The group also heard the sounds of combat, and confirmed that it really was a person. However, they realized that Sang-woo and his clones were drawing the assassins toward the entrance. Even so, he shouted that he had come to save them, and asked them to help him first. Yuna took command of Team 1, which quickly formed a defensive formation. The big man on the front line raised his shield and activated his barrier, protecting the area, while one of the mages fired magical arrows to slow down the ice assassins. Taking advantage of that opening, Sang-woo crossed the barrier and entered the subdimension. The entrance was closed right after. He thanked them and introduced himself as the rescue team for Team 1. Some seemed a little disappointed. Yuna asked if he was from Kindness, and he replied that in a way he was. He said his name was Jung Sang-woo, and that he had come at the request of the Kindness Guildmaster, Park Wante. Upon hearing this, they commented that they had not been abandoned there. Yuna asked about Sang-woo, whether he was okay. It took him a moment to understand the question, and he replied that as far as he knew he was alive, but still in a coma. At least he realized that she had a strong bond with her companions. He apologized for the situation, but said they needed to leave first. Captain Wante was waiting at the entrance, and was probably on the verge of collapse. He explained that they had to leave immediately, and that he had brought teleportation scrolls. However, when he looked more closely at the group, he noticed something strange. The count did not add up. There were initially 10 people. 1 had already left. There should be 9 remaining, but there were only 8 there. Yuna said she knew it was shameful to ask that, but she begged for help. Once again, one of her teammates had died on the mission. They could not simply leave her in that god-forsaken land. That was when Sang-woo understood why there were only 8 of them. He had already expected something like that, after hearing the report about an injured companion, but even so, he asked what exactly had happened. Yuna explained that they had been ambushed. The healer was behind them when they were caught off guard, and she died instantly. The tank commented that if he had paid more attention, he might have prevented it, but the others said it was not his fault. Everything had happened too fast. Sang-woo reflected that when he himself had been ambushed, he had also been attacked first. Maybe the assassins prioritized the most vulnerable target. Yuna said that at the moment of the attack, she immediately opened the dimension and ordered everyone to retreat. She wanted to fight, but if something happened to her, her companions would lose their only safe place to hide. They used a telepathy scroll to report the situation, but in the chaos, they did not notice a monster entering along with them. The one who noticed was Sang-woo. When one of the boxes fell. After that, they lost the teleportation scrolls. He was severely injured and returned to the entrance of the tower. Yuna explained that if she left, the dimension would immediately close, leaving her companions without refuge. Sang-woo then asked where the body of the deceased companion was. She opened a small rift in the portal and showed the location. The body was far away, exposed in the ice field. He realized that it would not be possible to recover the body without facing the monsters. He thought that because of a single corpse, she had given up escaping and remained there for 6 months. Even so, he said he would retrieve the body, but with one condition. He had come to save them, not to increase the number of casualties. He would try to recover the body, but if he saw that the chances of success were minimal, he would leave with everyone immediately, even without the corpse. Yuna agreed, saying she was sure that was what their companion would have wanted. Then Sang-woo added that there was a second condition. They would take care of the monsters outside. Yuna was surprised and asked if only they would do that, because it was extremely dangerous. He told her not to worry, because those who would fight were not real people. They were clones. Meanwhile, Cheon-song was at the JM agency and had already taken down Jumo, saying he had not expected that. The hunter who had taken out his men was under Jumo's association, and he could not accept that. He questioned whether it was not enough to have already become an enemy of Hee-song and said he should have stayed quiet. Then he grabbed Jumo's arm and demanded again the name of the person responsible. When Jumo told him to leave, Cheon-song broke his arm without hesitation and warned that the next one would be the right arm. At that moment, one of the Silver Moon men appeared with a paper saying they had obtained information. Cheon-song confirmed the name, Jeong Sang-woo, and commented that he was living in a great neighborhood, in a good house. Then he ordered them to send the boys to the address. Meanwhile, Yoo-hyun was hiding, worried, wondering if Silver Moon had reached that place and realizing that it was very bad. Junmo, even injured, asked why they were looking for Jeong Sang-woo. Jeong Sang-woo explained that his hunter had defeated the Silver Moon men and asked if he had ever heard of jewel crystals. He said that all the crystals had been taken and that they were the victims, that they had been robbed. Yoo-hyun began to wonder if they were there because of what she had done, and if they thought that Sang-woo had stolen the crystals. Back at Odin's tower, Yuna asked what he meant by clones. Sang-woo explained that they were not illusions, they were real clones, so they did not need to worry about their lives. Then he presented the plan. Number 4 and Number 6 would stay with the teleportation scroll while guarding the entrance. Number 2, Number 3, and he would go out to retrieve the body and then return. He emphasized that Team 1 should not leave that place for any reason, because their safety was the most important thing. The tank of the group said they could help, but Sang-woo replied that he knew they were strong. However, it was his responsibility to take them out safely, and that was his mission. Yuna commented that he had almost drawn all the monsters there. He explained that he had another plan in case they could not help, and that now they would use that plan. He asked them to trust him. Yuna was still not completely convinced, but she agreed. Sang-woo took the sword and thought that 6 months had already passed since the portal incident. Since then, he had been focusing on increasing his stats obsessively. To do that, he fed his clones with jewels and acquired abilities, among them one called Devour Monster, which absorbed part of the stats of a defeated monster with a 12% chance. That was the secret behind his absurd growth, but he did not intend to be satisfied with that. He would always take advantage of any opportunity to become stronger. He looked at the potion he had received from Woo-hyun, asked Number 4 for a knife, and in exchange handed over his cursed sword and the strength potion. He also informed the other clones that, as soon as they recovered the body, they should leave immediately, with Team 1. Yuna commented that she was not sure if that was a good idea, reminding him that when there was no one outside, the monsters would just wait, probably surrounding the portal. He said he already knew that and was prepared. When the door opened, he stepped out into the snowy field, lonely and silent, and soon began to be chased by the creatures. Number 6 told them to keep their distance from the entrance. The shield bearer of Team 1 asked if they would really be fine. Yuna replied that, so far, everything they had seen him do was run away, but that place was 40 kilometers from the entrance, and not just anyone could get that far. They decided to trust him for now and wait for the plan to work. Sang-woo, still in the body of Number 1, managed to block the strike of an assassin that came out of invisibility. The monster was shaken because it had not expected the block. He had not guessed the exact location, but he felt the approach. Several others leapt toward him as he moved closer to the body, but then Number 2 was struck from behind. It became clear that the enemies had circled around, and now they were completely surrounded. At that moment, he drank the mana potion. He felt intense pain as if the power was out of control. Then he fired his magic bullet, and a beam pierced through all enemies within range. After disintegrating the ice assassins, he opened a path to the body. Number 2 could still move, so he and Number 3 picked up the body immediately. Number 1 felt the mana flowing violently through his body, as if it would explode. His flesh began to disintegrate. Even so, he decided he would draw the attention of the other monsters to buy time for his companions. He ordered them to take the body back, while he held the rest off. The mana was tearing his body apart, and Number 2 and Number 3 managed to escape that area. Number 1 stayed behind, blasting everything around with the power of the overloaded mana. Meanwhile, the clones returned with the body and immediately sealed themselves in the subspace, beginning to prepare the teleport. Yuna asked if they were not going to retrieve the one left outside, but Number 2 told her not to worry, because it was just a clone. Outside, Number 1 continued taking attacks from all sides and releasing bursts of mana. He noticed that Yuna was looking at him, clearly not wanting to leave him behind. When they were finally teleported far away from there, he simply smiled and said he would see them on the other side. Shortly after, his body exploded into mana. The explosion killed several several ice assassins and activated the Devour monster ability, increasing his strength, reflexes, mana, and cold resistance many times over. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the big guy from the Canis Guild was still by Songtae's side, saying that day they would carry out the rescue mission. The mission might already be over, so he needed to wake up to greet his companions with a smile. Shortly after, a portal opened inside the tent at Odin's tower. Songtae became nervous, because the last time a portal had opened, he had seen an ally almost dead. But when he opened his eyes, he found himself in front of his sister, and said that she had finally come back. Sangwoo returned to his original body using the familiar and thought that it was the first time he had felt his own body explode like that, and that it was definitely not a pleasant feeling. He woke up right at the moment of the siblings' reunion. Songtae and Yuna tried to act strong, but Wontae could not hold back and hugged his sister while crying, saying that everything was fine now, and that everyone had come back. Yuna, however, started talking about Sayana, saying that because of her she had ended up in that situation, and that she really thought no one would come to save them. She had been very afraid. Wontae insisted that they were fine and had returned safely. At that exact moment, at the hospital, Songtae finally woke up. One of the clones returned to the master to give back the sword and the teleportation scroll. Sangwoo became excited when he saw the system, because he had achieved an impressive increase in his stats. Wontae called his attention and thanked him deeply, and both he and his sister bowed, saying they could not thank him enough. Sangwoo told them to stop that and lift their heads, saying that he had only done what needed to be done. Wontae replied that it was not over yet, and asked them to get in touch if any problem came up, because they would help with whatever was needed. The Canis Guild would do their best to provide support, since they owed him their lives. Sangwoo answered that if they were saying that, he would not refuse. He also mentioned that he had used one of the seals to kill the ice golem, but that there was still one left. Wontae said he could keep the remaining seal, since he was already planning to hand it over along with the other items. Sangwoo refused, saying that it belonged to their guild, and that he would feel uncomfortable accepting it. Yuna asked if he had been there the whole time, and Wontae confirmed that he had been busy controlling the clones, but had been present the entire time. She admitted that she had thought they were real people lying to calm her down. He replied that at first, he had not believed that such an ability existed either, and had wondered how strong that boy could become in the future. When he left the portal, even though he was in Iceland, Sangwoo could feel warmth. He commented that Wontae would be busy now, and he confirmed that yes, they would take care of Team 1, and also organize the funeral. Suddenly, Sangwoo received several notifications at once, because there had been no signal inside the portal. He saw the messages from Uhyun, saying that the humor agent had been taken by Silver Moon. Immediately, he asked Wontae for a favor, saying that he needed to return to a place as soon as possible, because those bastards from Silver Moon had kidnapped someone from the hill. Wontae asked why they would do that, and Sangwoo explained that he had had a small conflict with them before, when they tried to control a hunting field and went too far. Then Wontae took the teleportation scroll and told him he should use it, reinforcing that they would do their best to support him. Meanwhile, Uhyun was spying on the Silver Moon members, wondering why that bastard Sangwoo was not responding to her messages. At that moment, one of the thugs saw her and grabbed her by the neck. At that moment, Sangwoo appeared behind the thug through a portal and grabbed him by the neck. At the same time, the clones subdued the other guards, pressing knives against their throats. He asked where the humor agent was, while the man being choked tried to call for help. Unyun said she knew where they had taken him, and that they could deal with that guy already. Sangwoo simply knocked him unconscious and ordered them to tie them up. Unyun explained that Silver Moon had taken the hostage to a warehouse, and that there were men guarding the place. He replied that it was dangerous, so she should wait there, because he would handle it quickly. At the warehouse, Jinmo was tied to a chair after being tortured and interrogated. Chainsong mocked him, asking if he had slept and saying it was shameful at that age. He questioned why it had to be him picking a fight, commenting that there were not that many guilds that controlled hunting fields. Then he asked where Sangwoo was. The bald thug replied that he had gone abroad and that it should take a few hours for him to return. Chainsong said they could bring something to eat and continue the interrogation, but at that moment someone slammed the metal door hard. Shortly after, the doorknob itself was used to tear a hole through the door from the inside. When the door was broken open, Sangwoo walked in asking if they were from Silver Moon. Chonsung found it strange, because they had said he would take hours to arrive. The thug said he also did not understand how he had appeared so quickly, and asked if he was alone, since he did not see the masked ones. He went to check the place while Chonsung said it did not matter, as long as no one was killed. Chonsung, very weak and coughing blood, tried to call out to him. Sangwoo told him to hold on a little longer, because he would do to them the same thing they had done. The first thug, who was holding a baseball bat, had his arm broken and his face smashed against the ground. The second was stabbed with his own knife. In a few seconds, several were already on the ground. Jisun Song cursed his men, and said that Sangwoo was not weak, but he wanted to ask a question first. He asked where the crystals were, and if they could talk while alive. Sangwoo replied that he had no idea what he was talking about, and that he had gone too far, so this would not end peacefully. Chain Sung called him arrogant and said he had found documents about him in the office. He confirmed that he was rank B, and probably capable of defeating most of the hunters there, but mocked his ability, saying it was just cloning. He asked if he intended to fight relying only on stats, and sneered, saying that there were awakened people with useless abilities like his, and that was why he focused so much on attributes. He also implied that his group must be full of weaklings. Sungwoo simply replied that he could test it if he wanted. The clones appeared all at once, clearly irritated. The Silver Moon members recognized recognized those masked figures as the same ones they had faced before. The bald thug realized that the men outside had also been defeated. Chuan-song said he had noticed, and that at least now they were not at a disadvantage because he did not like defeating someone who was alone. Sang-woon asked if he was really that confident, and if he was eager to show his ability. Chuan-song replied that he would not even have the chance to see it, and simply became invisible. The thug thought that now he would take care of everything, because his stealth ability was absurd. Chuan-song asked if he had disappeared again. Invisible, Chuan-song began to whisper that sensing presence or aura was useless, because his ability removed all traces, and that he would die without even noticing. When he moved in to attack, certain that he would kill Song-woon, he only heard the order to grab him. At that very moment, the clones seized him without difficulty and restrained him, ready to finish him right there. Meanwhile, Sang-woo's old friends were at a bar celebrating the start of their 3rd year. They joked that after 3 years they were still the same, not even having a girlfriend. The mood became a bit dull, so they decided to just drink. One of them asked if anyone had spoken to Sang-woo recently. Kyungdo said that he had changed his number, and that there had been some news that he was working as a hunter. Everyone was shocked, thinking he was too naive for that, and that he would never kill a monster with that personality. Gyeongdo replied that they had no idea what Sang-woo was like when he was angry. He remembered that in their 3rd year of middle school, they were walking home when they were surrounded by gangsters who tried to steal his money. Sang-woo tried to hide to catch them by surprise. They asked if he had managed to save him, but Gyeongdo said that both of them ended up getting beaten together. Later he found out that Sang-woo had already been robbed by those same guys before, and that he had picked a fight again because he was full of anger from being constantly bullied. Those delinquents had been very surprised by that. Sang-woo had always had a strange personality. When the problem was only with him, he could even be merciful, but when it involved someone around him, he simply changed. Meanwhile, Chon-sung was still trying to understand what had happened, and kept repeating in his head how it was possible. Sang-woo simply told one of the clones to take Junmo to the hospital, and went back to focusing on the fight. Chon-sung asked how they had managed to see him, even while invisible. He replied that he seemed too confident in his own ability, but that Sang-woo had just returned from slaughtering monsters with exactly the same kind of stealth. Then he asked what he had said earlier, because he had talked so much nonsense that he probably did not even remember. Sang-woo responded point by point. He said his ability was not trash. He also said he had not trained only his body, but he admitted one thing: he really had focused on his stats. After slaughtering the ice assassins, all his main attributes had passed 20,000. With those absurd stats, he landed a punch in Chain-song's stomach that sent him flying to the other side of the warehouse. Number 5 reported that one of the men had tried to escape, but they had already handled the rest. Number 4 confirmed that only one had escaped, and that they were already taking the injured to the hospital. Sang-woo told Jinmo not to worry about him and to focus on treatment, but he noticed that Chon-sung was still standing. For Cheon-sung, that was impossible. The reports did not match. His strength was nowhere near that. There was no way someone could increase so many stats in such a short time. There had to be something behind it. That was when he saw the potion in Sang-woon's pocket. He said he had underestimated him, and that now he would not make the same mistake. It was time to show what a true rank B could do. Sang-woo replied that he honestly had no interest in seeing everything that man had to show. Cheon-sung began to run around him, trying to confuse the clones, but they could still track the sound. Then he started bouncing off the ground, ceiling, and walls to mix the noises. Sang-woo admitted that his speed was good, and that he could barely see him, but when the attack came, it was blocked. Right after that, he slapped Cheon-sung across the face and asked if he was stupid. Cheon-sung rolled across the ground again, kicking up dust to block the view. Sang-woo commented that with that cloud, he could see him even better. Even so, Cheon-sung started laughing, because he had managed to grab the potion. He said he knew there was something strange about his stats, and that this must be the reason. Sang-woo simply advised that it was better not to drink it. He ignored the warning, and drank the potion. His strength shot up to over 50,000. He said he did not have time to listen to advice, because he was busy getting stronger. Sang-woo replied that later it would be no use saying he had not been warned. In fact, Chain-song became overwhelmingly more powerful. He himself wondered what kind of potion that was, because even high-quality ones rarely had such an absurd effect. He asked who had made it, and said that if he told him, maybe he would let him leave alive after taking 1 or 2 members of the group. Sang-woo thought that number 4 and number 6 had already taken the humor agent to the hospital, so now he would have to deal with him using only number 2 and number 3. He simply answered that it was not enough to defeat him. Chae-kun-sung charged at full speed. When clones 2 and 3 tried to hold him, they were slammed into the ground with brutality. Even Sang-woo's original body began to struggle to exchange blows with him. At the same time, some Silver Moon hunters were invading Sang-woo's parents' apartment. Chon-sung asked if he understood now, saying that with just one call he could bury his family. It was that easy. At that point, neither Sang-woo nor the clones were able to keep up with his absurd strength. Then Sang-woo drew the cursed sword and made a massive slash that broke both of Chon-sung's blades in half. He responded with a direct punch that sent Sang-woo flying across the entire warehouse until he rolled outside. Number 2 was knocked down right after, and number 3 fell next. Sang-woo commented that the effects of the potion were indeed a bit strong. Oithyan, who was hiding with the last clone, asked if he was going to lose now. He replied that he would win, called her an idiot, and asked who the guy next to her was. Oithyan said she did not know. He must be one of the thugs who had escaped, so the clone simply started beating him. Cheon-sung asked what he was whispering so much about, if he was making a plan B. Sang-woo told Yoo-hyun to hide for good. Cheon-song provoked him, saying he still wanted to fight after what he had heard. He said he had sent men to his parents' house, and that was why people kept photos as proof. Then he called to confirm if they had already arrived, and ordered them to cut off his parents' fingers. But the phone fell from his hand because his arms went limp. His whole body began to lose strength. That was when Sang-woo remembered the side effect of the strength potion. The muscles literally melted. Cheon-song began to soften, as if he were melting from the inside. Sang-woo asked if he had not warned him not to drink that. Even so, Cheon-song, still on the phone, ordered them to bring his family as hostages immediately, but the person on the other end replied that they had grabbed the wrong person. The big guy said he was from the Kanos Guild, and that he was on the other end of the line. When the door of Sang-woo's parents' apartment was opened, the one there was the big guy from Kanos. He apologized for the untimely visit and politely informed that Mr. Sang-woo had successfully completed the mission and had already returned to Korea. While he said that, on the other side of the door he was choking a Silver Moon member. The man thought he was going to die right there. After finishing the conversation with Sang-woo's father, the big guy closed the door and faced the other Silver Moon members in shock. He said he would take them with him. He had heard everything Cheon-song said on the phone, and commented that he was a damn idiot. Then he confirmed to Won-tae that everything had already been handled, and that Sang-woo was aware of the situation. When the call ended, Cheon-song cursed his men as useless. His body kept melting slowly until it was almost just bone. Sang-woo said that from that point on, he could use his energy only to breathe, because he would need it. He grabbed his thin arm and warned him never to lay a finger on the people around him again. Then he broke his arm in half. Later, Sang-woo went to visit Junmo at the hospital, entering through the 5th floor window because visiting hours had already ended. He asked how he was feeling. Junmo replied that fortunately there were healers there, and that he only needed to wear a cast for a few weeks. He asked if Sang-woo was injured, and he said he was fine, that his regeneration was excellent. He also assured him that they no longer needed to worry about Silver Moon, because they would not dare do anything again. Then Sang-woo asked if he should reassess his rank. Junmo said that his class had certainly increased, especially after the rescue experience, but that he had not taken the test after that. Sang-woo explained that he had always just wanted to increase his stats and earn money to pay the hospital expenses, that he had never been interested in power or authority. He had always thought that doing his job well was enough, and that being looked down on because of his rank had never bothered him. But after that incident, his mindset had changed. If he were an A-class hunter from Silver Moon, would anyone dare mess with him like that? Of course not. Junmo said that if he really wanted to move up in class, it would be very beneficial for the agency. Having a high-level hunter would strengthen their position, and would also be the best way to prove his ability. However, he would attract a lot of attention, and situations like that could keep happening. Sang-woo replied that he had already made his decision. Later, he went to the association to do the rank reassessment. The attendant asked if he had come alone, since people usually took that test in groups. Sang-woon had already expected that question. Jung-damu had explained before that hunters usually checked whether they could defeat a monster of the same class as a team, if it were a Class C monster for example. A group of Class C hunters would gather to kill it. Sang-woon then concluded that normally monsters were stronger than the hunters themselves. Yoon showed that in a one-on-one fight he could win, but that did not apply to him. Meanwhile, Sang-woon told the attendant that he would be fine. The attendant replied that in that case he just had to kill a ranked monster and move on, and could even send messages to the troops and security if he wanted. Even so, Sang-woon asked if he could skip those steps and go straight to a Class B test. The attendant explained that it was not possible, since he could only apply for a test immediately above his current rank. Then Sang-woon asked which monster he needed to defeat, and the attendant answered that it was the fishman, handing over the form with the certainty that he would not be able to win. Sang-woon asked if that was all he needed to do, and the attendant, already irritated, confirmed, and even wished him luck, even though he believed he would come back to cancel the test. But Sang-woon remained there waiting for 2 hours, and the attendant began to wonder why he had not given up yet. After that time, Sang-woon stood up, went to the counter and stated that he had already completed the task, presenting the fishman and the evidence, asking to be registered as a rank D hunter. The attendant was confused, thinking it was impossible, since he had remained seated the entire time. What he did not know was that meanwhile, clone number 2 had already defeated the fishman. The attendant insisted that he had not even left the place, but Sang-woon asked him to at least check with the field team. When he checked, the attendant confirmed that it was not just 1, but 5 fishmen defeated. He called the hunting field, identified himself as being from the reassessment center, and asked if the player Sang-woon had really eliminated 5. The person in charge confirmed, saying that he had personally verified it and that there was even a recording. The attendant considered the possibility of bribery, but that did not make sense, since Sang-woon had not left the building. When the confirmation came, Sang-woon asked if everything was fine. The attendant, still in disbelief, said yes, and that his rank would be increased, even thinking that it could only be cheating, and that he would report the case. Sang-woon simply thanked him and said that now he wanted to register for Class C. Meanwhile, Ujian was recovering the refined jewels. After what happened with Cheon-song, She apologized, assuming that the attack on the agency had happened because of her, since she had stolen the crystals. Sangwon asked if that was why they had said that earlier, and she became nervous, wondering what he would do to her. Even so, he stated that it was not her fault, because the real reason was that they thought he had stolen them and tried to harm his family. It was a problem between him and Silver Moon, and there was no reason for her to worry. He said he was sure she had not stolen them for fun, and that he did not know what Silver Moon and Hye-sung had done to her, but he would not judge her problems. Because of that, there was no need to apologize. Back at the re-evaluation agency, the staff were impressed. The attendant congratulated Sang-woon for moving from Class C to Class B, and he replied that it was already enough for today. One of the attendants commented that everything had finally ended, and another asked if he knew that young man. He explained that it was Sang-woon who had requested permission for multiple entries, and that the doctor at the facility had been excited when telling everyone about his physical clone ability. In just one day, he had gone from Class E to Class B, something that would shock the entire Hunter network. A week later, a lot had changed. Sang-woon appeared on the front page of the news, and not only him, but the return of the guild invasion team also gained attention. Even so, the main focus of the media was Young Sang-woon, the man with the physical clone ability, the rookie hunter who became Class B in a single day. The Hunter network could barely keep up with the impact. In addition, he received 5 billion from the Canis Guild. Wontae explained that it was simply the payment for the mission. Sang-won thought it was too much money, and said he could not accept it, but Wontae replied that he had done far more than a simple job, practically a miracle by rescuing Invasion Team 1. Even though Jinmo had mentioned a contract, he had not talked about the exact amount. Wontae asked him to accept it, and to visit the guild someday, since the team would love to see him. Sang-woon felt very happy, realizing that from then on, he would no longer need to worry about money. He could pay all the hospital bills, and instead of continuing to maintain only the mana concentration intensive care unit, he would now be able to hire an S-class healer, Bless. When he found Bless, Sang-woon would pay whatever was necessary and beg on his knees for him to heal his sister. Meanwhile, Gyucha-ul, master of the Silver Moon Guild, tried to destroy the evidence using his fire ability, but Miho appeared and made it clear that it had been him who stole the warehouse. Gyucha-ul tried to say it was a misunderstanding, but the moment he moved to catch her off guard, he was struck directly by her claws. Later, at the Canis Guild office, Junmo was in a meeting with Wontae, who asked if the people who ambushed them were from Silver Moon. Junmo confirmed and said that it was probably not everything, then asked if he knew Chin-chung. Wontae replied that he did, the main culprit behind the incident, and commented that he had heard that the hunter Sang-woon had made his recovery impossible. Junmo explained that in the past, he had been the one who managed Chin-chung, back when he worked with Hee-shung. Wontae was surprised to learn that he had once been part of Hee-shung. At that moment, Miho entered the room with a document, stating that the relationship between Hee-sung and Silver Moon was already known. She brought information about the DEP, revealing that Silver Moon was manufacturing jewel crystals and supplying them to the Haesung Guild. Wontae asked if she had returned from her visit to Silver Moon, and she confirmed, saying she had been right about everything. The one responsible was Gyuchael, and she even added in a provocative tone that it was a pleasure to meet him. Humor agent. He replied in the same tone and asked if she had really gone there. Miho told him not to worry, since Gyuchael was still alive and they would see him again soon. When Wontae wanted to know what exactly DEP was, Miho explained that it was a body enhancement drug. She had already suspected that something was wrong because it did not make sense for a Class B guild like Silver Moon to produce jewel crystals without support. Hye-sung was deeply involved, which made everything even more dangerous. After the catastrophe ended, hunter activity was legalized, including the management of hunting fields by soldiers, taxes on earnings, and the purchase of monster drops. The work seemed more stable, but not everyone accepted these rules. Some hunters rejected identity registration and the imposed restrictions, went into hiding, and created their own society. Unlicensed hunters began making illegal deals, using weapons and information to protect their profits. Anboyer went to a bar she used to frequent and placed all the crystals on the counter, telling the bartender that they were the ones from Sinseodong Station. The bartender became nervous and apologized, and suddenly masked men appeared, demanding that she go with them. Anboyer went questioned whether he had been the one who caused that, and the bartender, frightened, admitted that he had been threatened, since they were pressuring his family. A person in the bar tried to protect Yu Hyun, questioning what those men thought they were to act like that, but ended up being knocked down by one of the masked men. Shortly after, the attacker was knocked out by a punch from Sang-woo, who said everything was going according to plan. When Yu Hyun decided to take the crystals to resolve the situation, she was not alone. Sang-woo explained that she was from the JN agency, and that he would help, asking her to pretend to try to sell the crystals while he followed her. After taking down the first masked man, he commented that he had already expected them to fall for the bait. Meanwhile, Shin Hae-sung was about to enter an extremely important place. During the inspection, he mocked the fact that they were checking the belongings of a rank A hunter, asking if they really thought he would bring a weapon or throw a stone, saying it was just a joke. The guard allowed him to enter, and inside the oracle was waiting for him. The prophet commented that he had returned once again, and Hae-sung responded provocatively, asking if he liked to joke, since it seemed he had not expected that. The oracle stated that he was not joking and said the answer remained the same, that he should give up and be satisfied with the life he had. Hae-sung remembered that it had been the oracle himself who said that powerful men, including politicians, would bow before him, so he asked why he should give up now. The oracle explained that his his fate had changed drastically, and that this change had occurred because of someone, not just one person but two. Back at the bar, after knocking down two masked men, Sang-woo grabbed one of them and told him to unlock the phone. The man replied that he would rather die, but Sang-woo said he could not kill him, although he could hand him over to the furious people at the back of the bar, leaving it unclear whether he would have a peaceful death in their hands. Later, someone called the leader of Team 1 of Haesung, Shine Jinuk, informing him that they had obtained the crystals and were already at the gate waiting. Shine Jinuk replied that it was fine, but made it clear that nothing could happen to the production of DP. Meanwhile, Sang-woo took the phone and began speaking quietly, imitating the voice on the other side with a shush in the middle of the sentences, saying that they were on their way at that moment. Then he hung up, satisfied with his own performance, and thanked the bald man who was there restrained. Next he said they would also take the crystals and asked where the factory was. The bald man replied that he would not tell even under threat of death. Sang-woo then asked the people at the back of the bar if they had heard that, and they said they could leave the man there and they would deal with him in their own way. The bald man became desperate, saying that was not what had been agreed. Sang-woo explained that he had promised not to kill him, and he really would not, but that did not mean the others would do the same. Faced with that, the man gave in and said he would tell everything. After that, Sang-woo asked Abyeon if she had recorded the conversation properly, because she was supposed to send the audio to Jinmo along with the location of the factory. She thanked him for helping, and commented that she had seen in the news that his ability was cloning, which was why those guys looked so much like him. Sang-woo asked if she really did not know, and she replied by asking if he at least remembered her name. He said yes, saying she was a potion maker, and got squeezed by the neck while she properly introduced herself as Kim Woo-yeon. Even annoyed, she wanted to know why he was alone and where the clones were. He replied that they were busy enjoying life, and in fact the clones were all at a barbecue restaurant eating meat for the first time, completely fascinated by the experience. When the audio reached Jinmo, he recognized the voice on the other side as Shun Jin-wook, Hyeosung's son. Won-tae commented that now the connection between them and the crystals was clear. Mi-ho explained that there were 5 locations supplying crystals to Hyeosung, and that since Silver Moon was practically dissolved, 4 remained. Jinmo asked if they could not simply take down Hyeosung with that evidence, but Mi-ho said she would love to do that, although it was complicated. Won-tae added that it was as if Hyeosung itself was manufacturing everything, in addition to having protection from the Korean Association. Even if they were arrested, they would be released quickly, so the best approach was to handle the situation carefully and gradually. He also advised Jinmo not to walk alone and said he would assign bodyguards immediately. Jinmo replied that he would also inform the hunter Sang-woo, but Won-tae stated that Sang-woo did not need to worry so much, as there was no one capable of kidnapping him. Shortly after, Sang-woo received a message from Jinmo, saying that the voice in the recording was indeed from a man of Haesung, and that the crystals were raw material for the drug DEP. He commented that it was dangerous, and asked Haehon not to go out for a while. She asked if everything had already been resolved, and Sang-woo replied by asking if she had not yet gone to the new office. He said she would be surprised. Later, standing in front of a huge and modern building, they entered a fully equipped office. Aryan was impressed and asked if the entire floor belonged to them. Jinmo explained that he had been thinking about moving for some time, had visited several places, and since the old office had been destroyed, he simply moved up the relocation. Sang-woo commented excitedly that they would be the future #1 national agency, and that this was still too little for them. Then Jinmo showed Orkaun a space reserved especially for her, a gigantic laboratory with state-of-the-art equipment. He said he had worked hard to set everything up so that she could make her potions in peace. He explained that most of the machines were already installed, but if she needed anything she just had to ask. He also said that she could sleep and eat in the room next door, which was empty. Orkaun thanked him, realizing that they knew she had nowhere to stay. At that moment, however, Jinmo received an urgent call, and called for Sang-woo, saying that he needed to go to the hospital immediately. Meanwhile, in the storage room of Silver Moon, Haesung observed everything that had happened and called someone from the shadows. One of his masked servants appeared and reported that Gyuchul was locked in the basement of Guild U, that all the documents related to DLP had been taken, and that the crystals had also been confiscated, since the other partners had not been able to contain the situation. Haesung then handed some cartridges to the man of the shadows, and asked if he knew where to use them. Since they wanted DLP so much, he would give it to them, even if it was not perfect yet. In the basement of Guild U, Gyuchul was indeed imprisoned when the man of the shadows appeared again, taking a syringe from one of the cartridges. Gyuchul panicked, asking what he intended to do, and the masked man replied that he did not need to worry, because it would not hurt that much. Nearby, Mi-ho commented that she did not need to be accompanied all the time, but Won-tae said he was only going to get information about Gyuchul. She teased him, asking if it was not to protect her from a possible kidnapping, and he replied that he would be more worried about the kidnapper. At that moment, Mi-ho smelled something burning, and when she looked, she saw that her guild building was on fire. A huge creature had knocked down several hunters, and one of them, injured on the ground, said that a monster had appeared in the basement, and that not even a rank B could stop it. Mi-ho thought that it had to be at least a rank A monster, but there was no portal nearby. Then she saw the scar in the middle of the creature's face, exactly the same as Gyuchul's. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the man of the shadows appeared near Chonsong, saying that they had trusted him, sent him to Silver Moon, and that was how he ended up. He stated that at least with that syringe, he could move again. Before he could apply the injection, the lady from Guild Yolo stopped him, saying that she would not allow anything like that inside the hospital. The masked man teleported to her side and threatened to use the syringe on her, but Sang-woon appeared at that exact moment, blocking the attack and saying that in that hospital, only doctors and nurses used syringes. Then he struck a strong knee into the invader's stomach. Outside, Miho and Wante were facing the monster that Gyucheol had turned into. A single punch from the creature had already made several buildings collapse. Wante asked if he was not a rank A hunter, but Miho replied that he was not, that he was rank B, and that because of the scar, there was no doubt that it was Gyucheol. Wante began to suspect that it was connected to DEP, since the monster seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. Miho concluded that if it was really Gyucheol, then Hyo-sung had done something, which meant that Chong-sung, who was in the hospital, could also be a target. When the creature roared, Miho launched one of her energy spheres, opening a hole in the monster's chest. However, in a matter of seconds, the wound regenerated completely. The counterattack was blocked by Wante, who tore off the monster's hand and used Crescent Slash. Even so, the creature began to manifest the abilities that Gyucheol had when he was human, launching an electric punch that threw both of them away. Wante then confirmed that there was no doubt left. That monster really was Gyucheol. Suddenly, a spear pierced through the creature's head. The one who appeared was Kim Il-ilgong, leader of the Taiyang Guild, also known as the Sun Guild. Wante asked what he was doing there, and Il-ilgong demanded an explanation of what was happening. At the hospital, the man of the shadows easily held back Sang-woon's strike and asked how he knew he was there. Sang-woon replied that no one enters a hospital like that without being detected. When the girl tried to use flames, his ability was simply nullified, but even so, Sang-woon delivered a strong kick that nearly broke his arm. The invader admitted that he was truly powerful. Siona thanked him for arriving so quickly, and Sang-woon said he came as soon as he heard, since the office was close to the hospital. The masked man then stated that he now understood why Shang-sung had ended up like that, recognizing Sang-woon's strength, and commented that it seemed the clones had also arrived. The clones appeared with full bellies, clearly after having eaten well. Sang-woon asked if he intended to run away, and the masked man replied that he was not stupid, but that there were still too many shadows there, including the treatment unit where his sister was, right below. When Sang-woon advanced with his sword, and the masked man dodged, he said that now that was a provocation, and that they would meet again soon, before disappearing into the shadows. It was explained that things were concluded very quickly after that incident. The monster outbreak that happened in the middle of the city was resolved with the power of 3 guild leaders, from the Sun Guild, the Yahello Guild, and the Canis Guild. Ilgon became very angry after hearing the whole story, and tried to spread the news, but the case ended up being known by people as just a simple short-duration portal outbreak. Gyueok was remembered only as someone who disappeared, because they could not officially explain his disappearance. Even though it was a bit late, after several meetings, interrogations, and information gathering, they found the location of the crystals and went there. But everything was empty. All the people involved with the crystals had also disappeared, and only the machines were found. There were several reports of monsters appearing in the middle of the city, but all information about it was removed over time. The monsters were quickly hunted down, and shortly after, people had completely forgotten about what happened, leaving everything as a great mystery. Thus, the unidentified monster outbreak came to an end. After that, Sang-woon commented to Junmo that they needed bodyguards, something he had been thinking about since the Silver Moon incident. He knew this would reduce efficiency in hunting, but believed that safety came first. Junmo asked if the bodyguard would be one of his clones, and Sang-woon replied that of course, since he had no money to hire anyone, he decided to place 1 clone at home, 2 at the hospital, 1 at the agency, and 2 hunting and training. When Junmo asked if he could not summon 7 clones, Sang-woon explained that he could, but one had already been sent to the Tower of Odin, where it was using a megaphone to attract the attention of ice assassins, just to gather them and blow itself up using a mana potion, as a new farming method updated in 2026. Meanwhile, in Korea, the opening ceremony of the Hunter Academy, Korean branch was taking place. President Won Hak-soo declared that the academy was built to train low-rank hunters on how to deal with monsters and develop skills to increase drop production. According to him, it did not matter if the abilities were poor or the rank was low. Anyone could be useful if they learned to form groups and fight as a team. He also announced that the person with the best achievements at the end of each year would receive the Miracle Elixir. After some time training at the personal academy of the JM agency, Sang-won was feeling a bit unmotivated, since he could not lift a 1-ton weight. Then he saw the news about the opening of the academy, and about the Miracle Elixir, and that caught his attention. The advertisement said that it did not matter if the person was bad. Everything could be learned. He asked Jinmo if it was true that it was possible to obtain an elixir, and Jinmo replied that he was also surprised, but that apparently it was true, since the elixir had been placed as the grand prize of a competition among students. Sang-woon commented that he had heard that there were several branches in various countries, and questioned how a mere academy could offer an elixir as a prize. Jinmo explained that it was not a mere academy, since it was founded by the Illuminati group, led by Jumper, one of the largest corporations in the world. Even Even so, Sang-woon asked why they would do something like that. Jinmo said that this was where the situation became strange, because it all started with the intention of reducing the gap between low and high rank awakened individuals, increasing the ability of ordinary players to deal with monsters in order to reduce casualties in case of disasters. As for the admission conditions, the lower the rank and the fewer the abilities, the better. Sang-woon remembered that he was currently rank B, and thought that if he had known this would happen, he would not have increased his rank. Jinmo said that even so, he could still meet the other conditions, since he was always bragging about his useless abilities. Sang-woon stated that he had more than 10 abilities, but Jinmo explained that heavy attack, aim, and magic bullet were all rank F, basic abilities. Rank E hunters usually had around 20 abilities, while a rank B should have an average of about 70. In terms of bad abilities, he was actually doing fine, so he could enter. Sang-woon said he had already heard enough. Jinmo also mentioned that there was a system based on donation, and asked if he still had the money from Kinas. Later, at the Korean branch of the Hunter Academy, President Won Haksu said it was an honor to meet someone so important. Sang-woon replied that, in fact, he should be the one thanking them for being accepted. Won Haksu asked how he could be so humble after donating 2.5 billion for the benefit of the academy students. He replied that he was happy if he could help and achieve some goals. At that moment, he thought that he managed to enter thanks to the money, finding the system a bit strange, but this was only possible because despite being similar to a university, the academy did not receive the treatment of a national university. He thought that, fortunately, he managed to make the donation of 2.5 billion, but regardless of whether it was 5 or 10 billion, that elixir was worth much more than that. In addition, according to the academy policy of prioritizing low-rank awakened individuals, the average of the students was something between rank F and rank A, and he, being a rank B there, attracted a lot of attention. Wherever he went, people recognized him as the guy with clones. The president commented that the academy was truly blessed, because receiving 2 rank B hunters in the very first year was something rare, and asked if he was not aware of that. Mr. Sang-woo, there was another rank B hunter who had entered through donation, just like him, and who might be as famous as him. The next class would be basic magic, and Sang-woo thought that he liked the situation because he would not have competition, but he became curious to know who the other one who entered the same way was. For him, there was no merit in high-rank hunters going to a place like that, but soon he thought it did not matter. He was not interested in the hunter industry. As long as he could get first place, the rest did not matter much. When the teacher left the room, a woman announced that there would be a welcome party for the students. Sang-woo commented that it really felt like a university, and thought that maybe the other rank B would be there as well, so he decided to take a look. At night, he went to the bar, had a few drinks, and ended up surrounded by several women asking questions, while some guys watched with envy, thinking he was too popular. Even so, Sang-woo only wanted to know if there was another rank B hunter at the academy. The girls said they did not know. He replied that then he must have been mistaken, and thought that maybe that hunter was hiding on purpose. Then he said the night had been fun, but he needed to leave. They asked him to stay a bit longer, since there was still a lot of alcohol left, so he grabbed the entire mug, drank it in one go, and said goodbye. On the way back home, he remembered his friends and the old drinking days, and thought that maybe it was better this way. Along the way, he met someone who was heading to the welcome party. Sang-woo confirmed that the party was happening, and the person asked if he was already leaving. He replied that he did not know anyone, and that was why he was going home. But he recognized her voice. She asked why he did not drink with her then. Professor, he realized it was Hasen, and asked what she was doing there. She replied that she was also a student at the academy. He joked by asking if she had failed at Gyeongguk University, but she said it was too cold and that she wanted to drink to talk with him. He thought that girl was hopeless. Later, they were at a more elegant and private bar, drinking fancy drinks, and he asked what had happened with her university test. She explained that she had not failed. She got in normally, but chose the academy because her dream was to become a hunter. Her parents wanted her to attend college first and get a license after graduating, but when the academy was created, she insisted, and after a few days of arguing, managed to convince them. Then she said that now it was his turn to explain. He asked her not to call him professor, since he was no longer her teacher, but she said that in that case he was her senior. Sang-woo found that even stranger and said it was better to keep calling him professor. She teased him, asking if he was embarrassed. After several drinks, she was already completely drunk, asking where they had left off in the conversation. He commented that he had not been able to get in touch because his phone had broken, but she asked for another drink. He told her to stop, saying it was already enough, and he did not even know how many glasses she had drunk. Suddenly, she grabbed his phone, saved her own number, and said that now he had no more excuses not to contact her. Right after that, she passed out on the counter from being so drunk. Sang-woo asked for the bill and carried her on his back on the way home. She woke up asking why she was on his back and if she had fallen asleep. He replied that she had passed out at the bar counter. She said she was dizzy and could not walk, so she could stay like that. He agreed. Haeyeon then asked why he had not contacted her in the last 6 months. Even if his number had changed, he could have found a way to talk to her. She had planned to punch him if she met him that day. She was very angry, but she could not. She said she had fun with him that night, and asked again why he had never spoken to her again. Sang-woo replied that he needed to do something. That was why he enrolled in the academy. He admitted that he had also had fun that night, that it had been the best day of the last 6 months. But he knew he was a lazy person, and thought that if he continued living as before, his determination would eventually disappear. He was afraid of repeating the same mistakes and feeling the same regret as before. He knew that people do not change easily, easily, and that was exactly why he was trying so hard. He cut several relationships out of his life, but that did not mean those people were not important to him. When he left Haein at home, she turned completely red, thanked him and said that she would let it pass that time. Meanwhile, Haesung was keeping an eye on the news about the boy with clones. The masked man of the shadows apologized to Shin Haesung, saying that Songwoo was stronger than he had imagined. Haesung commented that Songwoo should have gotten an autograph that other time. Suddenly someone entered the room asking why it was so dark in there. Haesung replied that he liked to think in the dark, and asked if he would start the following week, saying it would be better to show results at that academy. The boy replied yes, father, and said he was very confident. That boy was Shin Junyoung, son of Shin Haesung, the other rank B hunter who had entered the academy. Haesung told him to obtain the elixir because it could be his chance to prove his own worth. After a week of classes, the teacher asked if they wanted to learn more about basic elemental magic. Sangwoo already imagined that he would run into someone there again, but he did not expect Haeyeon to be in the same room as him. She said she had followed him on purpose. The teacher then explained that the first magic they would learn would be the fireball, a versatile ability that everyone likes, very useful during hunts or even when someone gets lost. Something that even cooks were learning. Sang-woo thought that they were starting with the fireball, but he kept reflecting that they should first learn about mana flow and basic magic theory. But the teacher simply brought several orbs so that they could learn the ability automatically. Sang-woo was not understanding almost anything and was completely lost, thinking that he was not understanding anything at all in